So hey, what's up guys, how are you all? I hope you all are fine. So today we are gonna see, what if Naruto manifested MAGECRAFT aptitude, ability to use rituals and spells. It will consist only one part. So enjoy watching it. No. Emiya Kurisugu, the famed Magus killer, could only watch in growing horror and trepidation as he watched helplessly what the Holy Grail continued to do in retaliation to his actions and thoughts. Everything was burning. Everything was collapsing. If one were to be there among the chaos, you would hear the roar of fires, the sound of collapsing rubble and buildings, along with the occasional cry of anguish and pain. For Kurisugu, he could hear nothing. He could only stare vacantly in horror on his knees, tears silently cornering in his eyes, threatening to fall freely. For him the world was silent, reminding him of what the Grail promised him. His wife and child for a sacrifice of the rest of the world. His refusal to his supposed desire angered the Grail, and caused it to curse him and lash out in retaliation, causing the scene out of hell before him. He also couldn't help but remember a few days earlier when Lancer cursed the Grail and those hunting for it upon his death, promising that it would only bring destruction. Kurisugu couldn't even find it within himself to chuckle or even twitch at his dark humor within his mind. His thoughts turned to every sacrifice he made for the greater good, his father, Shirley, Natalia, the whole Fourth Holy Grail War. Was it worth it? His cries of anguish and regret didn't help with his focus or his conscience, whatever was left of it. Suddenly, the world came alive for him. He could hear once more. And it absolutely terrified him. Roars of flames so hot, the sizzling of rubble and other debris under the heat, the collapsing buildings, and the cries of pain and sorrow. Wait, cries. Kurisugu looked around frantically with his dull eyes that lost their light long ago. For the first time in a long time he felt hope. But mostly desperation. He was desperate for survivors. Hoping that someone was alive amongst the chaos and destruction he helped cause. He searched through the rubble, hoping to find someone alive, or even a body. He hasn't seen even a single body yet. That terrified him as well. It was almost mocking, as if to say constantly, you are alone. Kurisugu shook his head slightly at those thoughts. He couldn't think like that, he had to find someone. Minutes turned to hours and Kurisugu was still searching. His face had become increasingly blank, but not the blank look of an emotionless killer he was famous for. No, this was the look of a broken man, a shell of his former self. He didn't care that his hands were bleeding or burned from the abuse of digging through hot rubble. He had to find someone. He had finally found a couple of bodies, though that filled him once more with grief, as he held a dead child in his arms. He couldn't help but have hope that someone else may be around. So he called out for help or acknowledgement. None came. Time dragged on and he was still searching. He looked even more broken than before. He was dragging his feet, occasionally digging through rubble once he thought he heard something. But there was never anything there. He heard something in the distance, vaguely and oddly. It sounded like a laugh of all things. Regardless of hearing the last thing he would expect to hear, he trudged forward, desperate to save at least one person from this tragedy. What he came upon was not what he expected nor wanted. He saw the man he has sought to kill for the entire war, and the man that has wanted to kill him in return. Kodaman Kirei. Close to him, sitting upon a heap of rubble with all the grace of a haughty and graceful emperor, was Archer. He was known to history as the king of heroes in Babylon, Gilgamesh, where his story was told in the ancient epic of Gilgamesh. And of all things he was naked without a care in the world. It was his garden apparently. Idly Kurisugu wondered why he hasn't struck anyone down for being unworthy to gaze upon his naked self, or why he hasn't summoned some clothes he no doubt has in his endless vault in the gates of Babylon. But he quickly shrugged off those thoughts. He didn't care. He didn't care that Kirei somehow survived their fight. He didn't care how he can still stand with a bullet wound where his heart should be. Or how the Grail chose to spare those two men of all the people in the city. He didn't care that the three men with the most blood on their hands were still alive amongst the carnage of innocence. He didn't care about the narrowing of Kirei's eyes, as if expecting him to come running towards him to kill him, or show a face of disbelief and question why he was still alive. He just turned slowly to another pile of rubble and began digging. Because he simply didn't care. Night had passed into dawn, dawn into morning, and one figure can be seen stumbling through the rubble. He looked to be around 7 years old and a couple inches shy of 4 feet. He had spiky golden blonde hair that fell and stood in all directions. It was also currently matted with dust and dirt, not to mention slightly singed. He normally had bright blue eyes that shone of innocence and mischievousness. They now though were dulled from shock and pain due to his surroundings. He had slightly tanned skin and strange light whisker-like birthmarks that was now covered in dust and dirt like his hair. Only a few cuts and scrapes were visible outside his clothes. The clothes he wore were a white t-shirt with orange short sleeves and dark blue shorts with some dark blue sneakers to finish it off. Though like the rest of his body they were tattered with dirt and some blood from his cuts. His name? Well, he was pretty sure it was Naruto Uzumaki. It's not like he was those other kids in the Fuyuki foster home, where they had their name on a note or something attached when they were dropped off on the stoop like some movie. No, he was just found. He was just brought to the home by police officers after they found him in an alley crying as a baby. Sure, they tried to give him a name, but to the confusion of the caretakers and social workers, he rejected them, saying they didn't feel right. So how did he come to the conclusion that it was his name? Well, it started when he was 5, so about 2 years ago. He began to have very specific dreams. These specific dreams occurred almost every night. He got his fair share of specific nightmares too. He kept seeing himself, living a life, growing older, and fighting for his life. He saw himself a lot louder than he was now and very lonely. He grew up alone with no one but a handful to even care about his existence. But then he went to school, but not any school, any academy, to become a shinobi, and it was his dream to be the best of them all, becoming the village leader so people will recognize and acknowledge him. He wasn't great in school. He sucked, in fact. He would skip school to do pranks, and if he showed up he wouldn't really pay attention. It's not anyone could discipline him really, he was an orphan. An orphan that was glared at or ignored by his village and made fun of by his classmates. To be fair, it was all an act, but he would rather be a loud-mouthed idiot if it meant others would notice him. A couple years later he is broken down in the middle of a clearing in a forest, trying to take the secret test to graduate, so he doesn't fail the academy the third time. His sensei Mizuki was part of the village that hated him. He tricked him to steal the forbidden scroll of sealing for him, so that he would kill Naruto and take it for himself. Well, he learned a technique in the meantime, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone technique, though his other sensei Ruka came to find him after he heard that he stole the scroll. The two of them were then found by Mizuki, who then proceeded to reveal information that would change the golden-haired boy forever. He had a massive sentient being made purely out of chakra given form and life sealed in him, making him a Jinchuriki, or more commonly known by its titles, the Kyuubi no Kitsune and the Demon Fox. Which leads us to the current broken-down state. He was saved by Ruka, who defended and acknowledged Naruto, boosting his confidence and conviction. He defended Ruka and gave Mizuki a case of endless mob beatdown through a sea of Kage Bunshin. Because of his efforts in learning a high-rank jutsu so quickly, Ruka graduated in giving him his headband. And all of this was within a couple of weeks' worth of dreams. He didn't understand a lot of it. How could he? It's not like people could help him sort this out. He was about to turn 6. People either think you have a really good imagination, or you watch too much television if you tell them I have constant dreams and nightmares about a ninja version me that seems like it really happened. Yeah. That would go over well. The dreams continued though for the now self-named Naruto Uzumaki. The name did sound cool to him. The dream self got placed on a team with his crush and his rival with a lazy, one-eyed sensei. The test for them didn't go well. The dream self was excited they would be leaving the village for the first time to Wave Country. The mission to escort and protect a bridge builder though was misranked with enemy ninja ready to fight them. They actually had to save a country from a corrupt tyrant of a businessman, Gato. They continued ahead anyway, and they were confronted by an A-rank missing nin, Zabuza. Had a badass huge sword though. Then again, to a 6-year-old that sword is either scary or the coolest thing ever. They were able to drive him off, but both Kakashi the sensei and Zabuza were incapacitated for a week. In the meantime they genin trained. While dream self Naruto overdid his training and woke up in a clearing, he found a boy who looked like a girl, and they talked with each other. It was there where he learned one of his most important life lessons. When people have someone or something precious to protect, they can truly become strong. Naruto in the dreams and the Naruto dreaming took that to heart. In the dream, however, the battle at the bridge continued as emotions ran high. Sasuke, the rival, protected Naruto from harm, sending Naruto in a rage of frightening power, unwittingly calling upon his tenant power. He defeated the hunter nin who was Haku the boy from the forest. Conflicted and hesitant, Naruto couldn't finish him. Haku took advantage of this and saved his teacher's life Zabuza from an attack from Kakashi. All of the emotions were for naught as the man that pulled all the strings from the country's suffering to the deaths of Haku and others, Gato in all his midget glory. He came to kill everyone by himself, cough, with a couple, cough, 100 or so thugs, cough, behind him, cough. The fight amongst ninjas stopped and Zabuza charged headfirst and killed Gato and several dozens of other men, before succumbing to his wounds. The rest were scared off between the intimidation of Naruto and Kakashi through clones, and the rest of the villagers rallying behind them. Later the bridge would be completed and named the Great Naruto Bridge, once the team left. Yeah, at the time all of this was almost too much for the 6.5-year-old, but the way he looked at it, if the me there can do that, so can I. And so began his self-imposed training. He would try to copy the fighting moves like he saw in his dreams, and those karate moves in cartoons on TV. Not to mention he became smarter through the dreams. He could see himself saying, writing, reading, and listening to new words and phrases. He was levels ahead of those his age. Because of this he took to writing down the dreams so he wouldn't forget. By the time he turned 7, his dreams had revealed to him, himself at the Chunin exams and what transpired. The curse mark on his teammate, the training with the super pervert summoning toads and meeting the fox in him, the finals proving he was better than a genius, the invasion, fighting Gar and other Jinchuriki, fighting Shukaku the demon sealed inside Gar with the boss toad summon. Defeating Gar, learning the old man Hokage died, going with the super pervert of a sensei, to find his old teammate and convince her to return and become Hokage. Only to run into an organization that wants to capture the beast within him and the other Jinchuriki Akatsuki and the last teammate of theirs, the one who orchestrated the curse mark, invasion, and the death of the Hokage. Orochimaru. Naruto learned a new move Rasengan, helped drive off Orochimaru and won the bet he had with Tsunade, and brought her back to Konoha winning a badass necklace in return. Things didn't go smoothly though. Upon the return, the rival and best friend Sasuke grew jealous Naruto getting stronger, and tensions continued to rise, until he decided to turn traitor. Some barely survived, some were barely hurt with the help of allies from Suna and Gaara and his siblings. Naruto though faced Sasuke himself. This was his latest nightmare. The fight was horrible as it was emotional. Brutality took place commonly in the fight. Sasuke in the end called upon the curse mark's power, grotesquely changing him, while Naruto was imbued with hatred and anger, with his use of the one-tailed cloak of the fox's power. They called upon their strongest attacks. The dark Chidori from Sasuke with the chirping lightning ready to pierce and a purple Rasengan from Naruto, ready to grind and pulverize into dust. They leaped at each other, howling the other's name as they clashed, creating a dark sphere surrounding them, symbolizing their struggle. Eventually Naruto he spared Sasuke by scratching his forehead protector, while Sasuke pierced his side. Sasuke left Naruto to his unconsciousness and unto his path of darkness. That nightmare was a scary one for Naruto. He nearly woke everyone with his screams as they clashed. He eventually went back to sleep through after some soothing words from the caretaker. He ended up having a much more pleasant dream. Though he found out in the hospital bed after the fight that Sasuke had successfully escaped and the Akatsuki were after him, he was happy to know that Orochimaru wouldn't essentially kill Sasuke by taking over his body, nor would the Akatsuki mobilize to catch the Jinchuriki for another 3 years. On top of that, he would be trained full-time as an apprentice to the super pervert who was actually a legendary ninja, Jiraiya. So after a few goodbyes and see you laters, he was off, not to be seen in. That was his latest dream, though now instead of being woken up by his nightmares, he was woken up by screaming and an earthquake. He had stumbled out of bed in shock and tripped, hitting the corner of his bed, knocking him out. When he awoke again, it was morning and the foster home was in ruins, with rubble and fire as far as the eye could see. The little 7-year-old boy, who had the mentality of a 13-year-old, idly wondered if he was in hell, but shrugged that off and walked on looking for other survivors of the disaster. He kept walking for a few minutes, slowly trudging along despite his growing sluggishness and obvious fatigue. Eventually he collapsed. Not a minute passed before he caught sight of a man in his early 30s in a black dress shirt, pants, tie, shoes, and trench coat. He had messy and spiky black hair, really dull black eyes looking at him with utter and pure relief. Idly Naruto wondered, why is he crying for me? Who is he thanking? And indeed the man known for his calculating coldness and underhanded tactics to get the job done, was crying tears of relief, thanking over and over again to whoever would listen, and that was responsible for the boy's survival of his blunder. The notorious Magus killer was sobbing over an injured, but alive boy he never met. The last thing Naruto saw that morning in the artificial hell was, instead of a blank emotionless face he was known for, a smile that was present among the happy sobs of relief on Emiya Kurisuga's face. Prologue End. It has been years since that fateful night, and 8-year-old Naruto Uzumaki has never been happier. Shortly after he woke up from his unconsciousness, he found himself in a hospital bed wrapped in bandages. He also found the man that saved him and a man he unknowingly saved, Emiya Kurisuga, sitting in his room waiting for him to wake up. He told him that he had been out for a couple of days, and after learning that he was an orphan even before the fire, he had decided to adopt him. Naruto, being who he is, jumped out of his bed, disregarding the machines and IVs attached to him to hug Kurisuga, as tears fell down his face. Of course this gave the nurses and doctors in charge of him a heart attack. Him not being attached a couple of days shouldn't have healed his injuries. This did make Naruto think back to his dream self where he healed any wound with the Kyuubi. Does he have something similar in him now? After being discharged, Kurisuga took the now named Emiya Uzumaki Naruto to the property he bought during the Fourth Holy Grail War. It needed a lot of work of course, so with the money he had amassed over his regretful career, Kurisuga hired enough people to get a job done. Of course Naruto helped whenever he could, learning how things work, watching how to fix appliances and electrical problems. After a couple of months the entire property was fixed and renovated with the latest technology. After getting to know his new father more, he began to trust him with his dreams. They had stopped for a couple of weeks, but recently they came back. He was older in these dreams again, around 15. When he told Kurisuga this, the skepticism was obvious, but when he showed him his little diary describing each dream and how absolutely detailed it was, something no 8-year-old could come up with, he began to have his doubts erased. But when Naruto confronted him after having another dream where he went to rescue his friend who was a village leader, and told him the specifics of the mission and how he fought, how he drove off the organization Akatsuki, how he still failed, and how his friend was brought back to life, the doubts were gone. He told Naruto that it may have been his past life, and he was reincarnated into the one he currently has. It may sound ridiculous, but then again he just has to look back at his life, and then he realized nothing is impossible. He fought off dead apostles, became a magus, used magecraft, and yeah, being reincarnated and having dreams about the past life doesn't sound so crazy anymore. So after Naruto came clean, so did he. He told him that he was a magus, and that magecraft was real. Magic is real, exclaimed an excited Naruto from across the room. We magus actually call it magecraft, and yes it is real, answered Kurisugu. He never did get used to Naruto's energy and hyper-personality, but then again according to his diary of dreams, he was worse in his past life. A small chill ran down his back as he thought of a loud-mouthed orange-clad Naruto running around pranking people left and right. Good thing he taught him proper etiquette. What about the chakra from my dreams? It's the mix of spiritual and physical energy that comes from within the chakra circulatory system, questioned Naruto after some thought. Well, maybe that is what you used, but here we use magecraft and magic circuits. The thought being the energy coming from within and mana coming from the earth, and the magical circuits within us convert them into prana. This gives us the ability to use magecraft. There is a theory of parallel dimensions, and with magecraft being real who's to say they aren't. Maybe your past self was from one. I guess, mumbled Naruto. So could I do magecraft? Do I have those circuit things? Yeah you do, and a surprising amount of both circuits and not actually. Heh, I guess I'm just naturally awesome like that, boasted Naruto. The cockiness apparently got transferred as well. Yes, I checked myself last night when you were asleep. You have at least 80 inborn magic circuits. It really is incredible, stated Kurisugu, which caused Naruto to beam once more. Though that just means you will have to work that much harder to control it, which caused Naruto to fall over in defeat. Not again, he whined. So can you teach me? Asked a hopeful Naruto. I don't want to. It is a dangerous profession, being a magus, answered Kurisugu with regret laced in his voice. I know it may be dangerous. I mean my past life was nothing but dangerous. With my luck I will get in a bunch of trouble. I want to protect the people that will become precious to me from that trouble and danger. Someone has to. Naruto was standing up and in front of Kurisugu at this point. It might as well be me. I know what it's like to see someone die. My dreams were realistic. I could practically smell the blood sometimes, he mumbled off as he remembered the dreams. Watching Haku sacrifice himself, Zabuza charging to his death, the Chunin exams, the invasion, fighting Orochimaru and Kabuto, trying to rescue Sasuke and later Gar. But you said I have a huge amount of that stuff to make prana. I have the power to help and protect people. It would be insulting if I don't use it. His voice was steadily growing louder, almost yelling. I would feel terrible knowing that I had the power to stop bad things from happening, and I did nothing. So please teach me, yelled Naruto with his body bowed, but his head staring straight into Kurisugu's surprised dull eyes, filled with determination. After a few tense moments, Kurisugu relented with a tired sigh. Alright, you win. Always so stubborn and dramatic, said Kurisugu with a tired small smile. Though magecraft should only be used in secret and to the benefit of others, without attracting suspicion or confusion, he warned. Whatever dad, I know, I used to be a shinobi, remember? So, where do I start? He replied with excitement. Before he could get to learning the cool spells and stuff, he had to learn the theory. Especially if he wanted to control his vast amount of art and circuits. He had to learn how to use his magecraft efficiently, so no energy would be wasted. Once he compared it to the chakra control exercises of his past self, he understood. It didn't mean he had to like it though. It was so boring. Why couldn't he have those shadow clones like his past self? That memory transfer would be awesome. He could read all the theory stuff and get right to the awesome magecraft. After a few more months of theory practice after he came back home from school, he was told he was finally ready to learn actual magecraft. The immediate thaumaturgical crest was placed onto Naruto, and he was ready to learn. His origins were different than Kurisugu's strange fire and earth affinities, giving him his severing and binding origins. His affinity was like that of his past self, wind. He was taught the basic spells like Night Sight, giving him the ability to see in the dark, using familiars, hypnotic suggestions to those with no magical resistance, though the repair spells couldn't be taught by Kurisugu, wasn't in his magical nature. Kurisugu was limited in what he could teach Naruto. He was a man of combat, an anti-magus. Or was, the curse saw to that. Naruto had to learn a lot of the basic spells himself through the theory he was taught. Kurisugu was reluctant to teach Naruto his style of combat, though Naruto quickly convinced him, saying it was what he was meant to be. His past life and his experiences ensured that. So Naruto was taught the beginnings of Kurisugu's take on his family magecraft. Innate time control. They spend generations researching and seeking the magecraft that controls time, eventually reaching time manipulation, which is the ability to separate the passage of time inside a designated space from the flow of time in the outside world. It is classified as high thaumaturgy in the form of a bounded field that can be regarded as a type of reality marble in a way, but still not something extraordinarily difficult to utilize like other time-related magecraft or something on the level of the term magic that is unable to be replicated. It allows for time adjustment that can only stagnate the time which has passed and accelerate time in the future, rather than something more advanced like time modification, which has the ability to reverse cause and effect and change the past. The major problem is that the practitioner needs to consider the size of the bounded field and the scope of time that needs to be modified. It requires a large amount of prana and similar rituals in the same magnitude of high thaumaturgy to activate it. It would normally be applied to a wide area and a long period of time, taking longer to set up and more prana to utilize it, as the bounded field becomes larger and the deviation in time becomes longer. It was a good thing Naruto can produce 750 units of prana and max out at nearly 1500. It was of course a dangerous magecraft that threatens your body's internal systems. The only reason he taught it to Naruto is because of Avalon inside of him. Though he didn't know about Naruto's natural Uzumaki vitality. Naruto also had to learn through theory and word of mouth. Kirisuke couldn't demonstrate it anymore, due to the curse that was slowly killing him, anger mind you. He also had to teach Naruto strategy and build his brain's intelligence, so he can utilize the innate time control effectively. When Naruto was 10 he taught him how to shoot. Simply handguns at first, no need to get ahead of himself. Plus, he couldn't really steady a rifle anyway. He had him do the same things Natalia made him do. That hurt to watch. Seeing Naruto trying to put a gun together as quickly as possible in the hopes of impressing him hurt. It was like watching himself try to impress Natalia so she could take him with her. So many regrets. Hopefully he won't regret what he is doing with Naruto. He couldn't take another tragedy. Naruto handled his physical training by himself. It's not like Kirisuke could help him anyway. He was slowly losing the feeling in his limbs. He needed help to move around the house. It was a good thing that kendo girl Taiga Fujimura lived nearby. She was so helpful, not to mention she reminded him of Shirley. He couldn't help but dote on her. She returned the favor with Naruto though, always promising to help them and teach Naruto to defend himself. That almost made Kirisuke laugh when she said that. Naruto could defeat her before she could blink with the magecraft he knows. Between the lessons of his dreams from his past life when he watched others fight, or when he fought himself, Naruto was fine in his instruction of hand to hand. Kirisuke just pointed out when he looked off balance or just watched him in general. Taiga though would spar with him in kendo. Naruto wasn't a sword person though, he'd rather have a kunai like his past life. So Kirisuke bought him a large amount from an old contact of his. Naruto would have to learn to keep them in good condition, and how to maintain them of course, but that is all easily learned over time. Now he just needed more training and practice, and to Kirisuke's extreme reluctance, application to see where he is. So I have to go out and apply what I have learned. That makes sense. Though how should I? Go out on a patrol around the seedier side of town? Asked the 11-year-old. He had grown to a healthy height of 4'9", and a lean 85 pounds. His golden blonde hair was the same length as his past self when he was his age. The light whisker marks were still there, and his blue eyes still shine brightly with mischievousness and determination. He has a dark blue long-sleeve turtleneck shirt on with black cargo shorts. His shoes though were black and orange. Got to have orange somewhere. Currently he is sharpening some of his kunai in his workshop out in the back of the house. He converted the shed into the workshop that now holds all of his weapons from kunai to daggers and swords, and guns ranging from M9s and Kirisuke's old Thompson Contender, to Calico M950s and P90s to sniper rifles and Walther W8 2000s, and a US Marine Corporation SRT M24 from an old contact. Kirisuke was sitting across from him watching him attend to his weapons. He waited a moment as he kept staring at Naruto's nimble hands taking care and pride in his tools before answering. Yes, I'm sure you already know from your dreams that experience means everything. A soldier with years of fighting experience will survive much easier in a war than a professor who has only studied war and never experienced it. He answered knowledgeably. And yes, the quickest way to get your feet wet would be to, as you say, patrol the town. Heh, I'd be like a superhero patrolling the town he looks after and busting bank robbers. Naruto chuckled for a moment before looking up to see his adoptive father looking out the window with a faraway look in his dull eyes. He looked at him with worry before wondering why he seemed so regretful. He had that look almost every day. Almost as if he was wondering if he should just die. Dad. Kirisuke snapped out of his dark thoughts before turning to his son and answered him. What is it, Naruto? I was wondering, he began. What? He was having a difficult time putting it both delicately and into words. What happened 4 years ago? Why do you always seem so regretful? That caught him off guard, though I guess it was natural, with the way he acted. He simply replied in the same tone he always has. It's nothing you need to know. Naruto, though stubborn, knows when he shouldn't pry. His dad's body language screamed, "I don't want to talk about it, please talk about something else." So he did. No reason to cause an argument. "Okay, well I guess I should get ready for tonight, then, right?" he asked with a fake smile that hid the frown his face wanted to put up. "Yes, you should though eat dinner before you leave, you don't know how long you will be out there," he advised from experience. Alright. Naruto was currently walking down a street in Shinto. He was wearing the same shirt and shoes he wore earlier, only now he has on black cargo pants and a black trench coat with a black backpack carrying most of his equipment. Extra ammo and kunai, a Walther WA-2000 rifle with a bipod, and finally one smoke and one frag grenade. He has a leather harness over his shirt, but under his trench coat. It currently has 2 black M9s holstered on either side of his torso. He also has a kunai pouch similar to his past life on each thigh, carrying 15 kunai each. Needless to say, he is ready for any outcome. There is still some construction going on, but the buildings that are finished look very modern. He was on his way to the harbor area where the seedier people live or operate. The area was still under construction, so it gave almost a perfect cover for criminals and drug dealers. They could smuggle their products across the river into the harbor, directly into the urban city. And where there are drug deals, there are shakedowns, and when drug deals go bad and shakedowns occur, so does violence. He walked into an alley and after looking around to make sure no one was looking, he quickly scaled to the top of the building, using his shinobi physical skills and minor reinforcement. He walked to the edge and activated night sight to better see things in the dark and from a distance. He strained his hearing to focus on anything out of the ordinary. It has been over an hour, and Naruto has jumped from building to building, stopping on each for about 5 minutes before moving on. So far he has seen nothing. Sure, there was the occasional guy walking with a dark hoodie up, but nothing out of the ordinary. Finally, with his hearing enhanced, he heard what sounded like a struggle was going on. Sure, you hear sounds like a trash can getting knocked over, or the normal street sounds from stray animals or bums moving around, but this was prolonged, and there were also muffled voices. So acting quickly, he jumped toward the struggle from the rooftops, until he found himself looking down from the building at an alleyway below. What was going on was what seemed to be one of a shakedown victim's worst-case scenarios. The scenario of you don't have the money to pay the enforcer. So what will happen to you? Well, it depends on what you do for a living or what kind of person you are. Are you a working family man down on his luck that needed to make a loan, but couldn't pay in time or refused to do what the favor asked in return, like enforce on someone? Well, they either trash your home, beat you in front of your family, or they beat members of your family. Are you a drug addict and you couldn't pay a debt? They beat you, trash your place and take what's valuable. Are you a high-class businessman? They blackmail you with either fake or true information, but it's usually true if you are dealing with these kind of thugs. Are you a woman and you owe them money? Well, if the enforcers are nice, they trash your place and take what's valuable. If they aren't nice, they beat you and do the former. If they aren't nice and you are unlucky, they will do the previous actions and rape you. What Naruto was looking at right now was a woman about to be raped, and from what he can hear, it was the last situation. She didn't make a full payment. So now she gets raped. Not if he can help it. He pulled the collar of his shirt up, so that it covered his face up to his reminiscent of his sensei of his past life, Kakashi, and lightly jumped down to the fire escape below him. He stalked down slowly to the alley and hid in the shadows among the trash cans. He pulled a kunai out of his pouch and held it in a firm reverse grip. He silently breathed in and out deeply before muttering, "Time, Walter. Double axle." Sonomi Ishikawa was crying. She knew what was going to happen, and if she resisted, her punishment would probably be worse. It was the 3rd time she messed up on a payment. It wasn't her fault that she couldn't come up with the money quick enough. She had to work 3 crap jobs just to even come close to the monthly payments. But now this greasy guy was fondling her with one hand while slapping and beating her with another. She knew she went to the wrong people, but the banks wouldn't give her a loan with her bad credit and history. Now she is paying for it with rape. All of a sudden, though he stopped touching her, she reasoned that he was probably trying to undo his zipper. She didn't open her eyes though. She didn't want to see this guy take pleasure in her pain. There was a light thump and odd choking sound before it went quiet. Nothing is happening. Why did it get so quiet? She idly wondered. Tentatively, she opened her eyes and saw that the man was now spread eagle on his back with blood pooling around his neck. She moved forward to investigate and saw he had what looked to be a stab wound into his neck. She looked around hoping to see who saved her, but saw no one. Not looking a gift horse in the mouth, she silently thanked whoever saved her, and she went through the man's wallet to take his money. She then ran back to her apartment so she can amass more money to pay off her debt. Naruto watched from the building roof once more as she ran away. He was catching his breath after that use of double axle. He didn't want to risk using his gun or a kunai and the guy make a sudden move and he missed giving himself away, or worse, hit the woman. So he went for the safe and guaranteed effective route. MAGECRAFT. It was his first kill in this world, he realized. In his past life he has seen plenty of death even before the 4th grade Shinobi War. Though that war showed it on a grand scale. Niji's death was a tough nightmare to have. He didn't know if those mass amounts of Zetsu clones he killed count as kills, but he definitely counts Kakuzu as a kill. So he knows the feeling, but he also doesn't. It's a new and it's an old experience. It's difficult to understand. It makes him feel uncomfortable. Yeah, he doesn't enjoy it, so that's good. What's worse is he saw it all in slow motion, and not in a hypothetical or psychological sense, but physically. His MAGECRAFT made sure of that. So he cleaned his kunai with a dirty rag in his bag, put the kunai in the pouch, turned around and jumped rooftop to rooftop, so he can finally go home and get some sleep. Maybe he will have a nightmare of his own life for once. It has been almost a year since his first patrol, and it wasn't his last. He would go out on patrol once a week. He still had school after all. Not every patrol had action. He has only had to kill 9 times, including the first patrol. The police assumed it was the normal gang or criminal violence, since the people killed were mobsters, enforcers, or thugs. It didn't mean they weren't trying to find out who did it. But really, who is going to suspect a 12-year-old? Maybe if this was the Elemental Nations, but this is Fuyuki City, Japan. He still practiced and trained in his MAGECRAFT, physical abilities, and weapons. He did learn to always train and hone his skills from his dreams of people like Rock Lee and every other normal shinobi. He was also trying to replicate the Rasengan with prana. It is extremely difficult, but there is progress. He is still in the 3rd stage, control. After all, he can't make shadow clones to help him. Kurotsugu was surprised to say the least when he saw a swirling mass of prana in his hand one day, only for it to explode. It was just more proof for him of the past life theory. He read the ongoing journal after all. He is also planning on publishing his diary after some refinement, of course. His past life was incredible and compelling. He might as well make money off it, maybe sell it to a manga company. Now though, he is sitting with his adoptive father outside, looking up at the moon. Amiya Kurotsugu is a shell of his former self after 5 years. The Angry curse has really taken effect. His limbs are lame, his sight is dulled, and most of his circuits are useless. Idly, as he sits with his strange adopted son watching the moon, he reminisces his life. He can't help but feel sadness and regret when thinking back. From Shirley and his father to sacrificing Natalia, the 4th Holy Grail War, to being unable to save his daughter Ilya. He closes his eyes in silent self-loathing when his son called out to him. Dad. Hey old man. Exclaimed an annoyed Naruto. If you're gonna sleep, go, Betty said with a teasing smirk, not that he could see it. Oh, no, I'm fine. He replied light-heartedly. Naruto could tell it was a fake tone. You know, when I was younger I was a hero. I saved a lot of people, but killed a lot as well. The people that knew I saved them praised and thanked me like a hero, but the people I killed, if they could see me they would curse me before I died. After a moment to think on his words, so what, did you give up? Isn't that normal though? You know this job? Questioned Naruto, who was obviously curious. You can't blame him. His father never spoke of his past other than when he instructed him in MAGECRAFT. Sadly, yes. You can only be a hero for so long. When you become an adult it's much harder to call yourself one. He paused for a moment before continuing, but his face looked a lot older right then. There was this saying I heard once, you either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I wished I had realized it sooner. Though, I guess when you put it that way, you couldn't avoid it. Yes, you're right. Did you become the villain? Questioned Naruto softly. You know, I'm not too sure myself. Maybe I did in some people's eyes, but maybe in some eyes I quit before I became a villain. He replied. After a moment of silence and a tired sigh, Kurotsugu looked up and said, the moon is really beautiful, isn't it? Nodding absently and humming agreement, Naruto stated firmly with a slight teasing tone, yeah, well, since you couldn't become a hero and my past self was a hero, what kind of guy would I be, if I didn't try to be one as well? Then the teasing tone stopped as he said firmly, I'll be the hero for you, the hero you couldn't be. I have to live up to my name, Amiya Uzumaki Naruto, after all. He finished with a wide grin. Kurotsugu then turned to him in slight surprise as Naruto continued, leave it to me, I'll accomplish both of our dreams. He finished with a determined smirk. Kurotsugu then faced forward again and let out an amused but happy breath, and said somewhat happily, yeah, that's a relief. He closed his eyes and thought back when he was a kid, and he told Shirley that his dream was to be a hero. I want to be a hero, but I know Naruto will be one. And so the famed Magus killer, Amiya Kurotsugu, died at the age of 34. Naruto could only watch as his teacher, mentor, and above all father of 5 years, peacefully die after having his dream passed on to his son. Unknowingly, tears were silently streaming down his face as he stared up at him. He turned to face the moon and let out a choked sob and tried to smile. Yeah, the moon is really beautiful, old man. Everything about this situation terrifies me. The monstrosity beyond comprehension with 10 tails struggles to get free from between 2 giant slabs of earth. Meanwhile, the 2 men responsible for all the suffering for the last couple of decades and this current war go through a couple of hand signs before stopping on the tiger seal. Standing on either side of the 10-tailed monster, they breathe in deeply before exhaling massive amounts of fire from their respective jutsu. Kaden. The Kufyu Ranbu. 5 release. Chaotic Dance of the Storm. Kaden. Gyakumetsu Jaku. Fire Release. Grand Fire Extermination. Right now I'm already exhausted. I'm protecting everyone by covering them in my chakra mixed with Kurama's. But after seeing these massive fireballs coming for us, I can't help but sweat a little interpretation. But I plow forward anyway and boost my chakra once more, giving everyone extra protection. Everyone survives the fire, but the two men fire massive kunai and shuriken from Obito's pocket dimension, and giant magatomas from Madara's Susanoo. Once again I control all of my chakra to deflect the projectiles from hitting my comrades. If I wasn't exhausted before, I am now. So exhausted in fact, I was nearly hit by a surprise attack from Obito who had come from his dimension, if it weren't for Kakashi. Obito notices I'm breathing heavily, taking a knee, and he starts talking to me. Naruto, you have only been covering Elsa's asses. Is there any reason to what you are doing? Meanwhile Kurama is chiding me on overusing his chakra, saying I'll burn out. He also warns me that the Jubi is charging up chakra. Obito then continues, you're exhausting yourself for no reason. I wouldn't expect someone like you to understand. He is surprised by my statement, then I charge forward to attack with a chakra claw while continuing my answer. I'm happy when my comrades are near me, they give me strength, they keep me going. I slash at him, but he gets away in time. If you feel your comrades' pain, and death brings you closer with them and see it as another connection, why bother protecting them to such an extent? Obito questions. That fucking mouth of yours makes me sick. You make it easy for me to believe that you are just a selfish asshole. So keep spouting your shit, I won't listen. Because even though the pain hurts and is numbing, we accept that pain of the deaths of our comrades. I don't want to throw that pain away. I might be selfish, but having no comrades around makes my heart ache so much I can't put it into words, period. I finish by slapping my hand over my heart and glaring up at Obito. As Obito glares back at me, the Jubi finally breaks free from the giant slabs of earth. It roars as it shatters its temporary prison, and lets out another ear-spitting shriek as its arms bulge and grow larger. Kurama warns me that it's preparing for Tendenchai, heaven and earth paranormality, and then Obito goes on to speak again, as he faces the 10 tails. This is what happens when you cut me off from the Jubi, it's beyond suppression now, maybe I should become its Jinchuriki now. All of a sudden the Jubi roars once more, and the sky above clears of smoke before clouds gather and lightning begins to strike. Kakashi prepares to erase the Jubi with his kami, but Obito interfered, and they both went into the pocket dimension to fight. The Jubi then roars once more, releasing its energy as a concussive force, shattering the landscape, creating a huge crater, while the surrounding superstorm become filled with tornadoes and lightning storms. Everyone is overwhelmed by the power that swirls around the Jubi, as rocks and debris swirl around, destroying the land before it explodes in a maelstrom of power. A mushroom cloud of dust and debris forms from the blast, signifying its power from releasing its energy alone. As the dust settles, everyone in the army is revealed to be unharmed, just dazed. My chakra saved them again. Though now it's flickering and fading away in my exhaustion. I can't even summon it to surround myself. I am back in my normal state. My clothes are tattered, my arm and face is bleeding, I'm out of chakra, and the Jubi just made eye contact with me. Fuck. The Jubi roars as its arms bulge once more, and puts its hands together like it's praying as it gathers a chakra once again. I fall to my knees and tremble as my body gives out. The last of my chakra that was protecting everyone fades away. However, as I look up I see everyone standing in front of me to fight, while Sakura heals me. I couldn't help but smirk. This is what it means to be comrades. The Jubi though opens its mouth to insane proportions as an enormous bulge comes out. The bulge begins to open up into a grotesque flower that begins to charge up another Biju Dama of monstrous proportions. I know that even if we still had my chakra most of us wouldn't survive it. Sakura though rallies everyone as she heals me, and Shikamaru comes up with the plan to make numerous earth walls. After contacting everyone with Ino's help, they follow through with the plan. They raise wall after wall in preparation. I know though it isn't enough. After all, I use the damn technique. And this is powered by the Jubi. But I can't think negatively, I have to believe in them. Even as the Jubi fires its ball of destruction, even after it plows through wall after wall. I close my eyes trying to convince myself they can do it, even as the ball continues to advance despite Killer Bee trying to hit it with his own Biju Dama, and then throw his body in the way in his Hachibi form. I close my eyes believing they can do it, even as I slightly tremble in pain. Though nothing happens, the ball of destruction disappeared. I hear the sound of a kunai piercing the ground and I look up. It's a familiar tri-pronged kunai, with a ceiling script that signals the arrival of my hero and idol. The warping through time and space reveals the Ito Tensei revived Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, who jokingly asks, am I late? With a smirk, I reply, no, you're right on time, Dad. Senpai. Naruto senpai. The blonde identified as Naruto groans as he wakes up, rolling his shoulders to get the kinks out from sleeping on the floor of his dojo. Oh, morning Sakura-chan. He says with a sheepish smile while scratching the back of his head from being found asleep on the floor. Sakura Matsu has shoulder-length violet hair with a red ribbon on the left side, holding her hair back from falling over her ear. She also has violet eyes that looked really dull to him, like she experienced something terrible, and she wears the standard Himura girl's uniform. She just smiles gently and replies, "Good morning, senpai, there is still time for you to get ready. It's weird for you to oversleep." Such a sweet girl. He never could get her to stop calling him senpai. She would always just shyly look away and say she couldn't do that, saying she should show respect and all that. Sometimes he finds Japanese formalities annoying. "Oh, I guess I was more tired from my night jog than I thought. Sorry." Naruto replies sheepishly again. Though by night jog, he meant that he came home late from his weekly patrol. He always made an effort to jog around town at least once a week, he would tell Sakura and Taiga. They don't really question it. Probably because they have followed him that one time just to see what he was doing. That was the night he didn't go on patrol. He did sense them the moment they left his house. No way would he go on patrol knowing they were following him. Though it was probably Taiga that wanted to enforce Sakura to come. Once again she just tucks her purple hair behind her ear, and says with that sweet smile of hers, "Don't be, I would be happier if you oversleep from time to time. It would make it worthwhile for me to take care of you." Naruto just sighed mock exasperatingly and said with his eyes closed, "Just what am I going to do with you, huh?" He stood up to stretch once more, revealing his new stature. Naruto at 17 years old is now 5'10" and 160 pounds. From his constant training he maintained a compact athletic build, making him really lean. He kept his blonde hair moderately short, thinking if he grew his bangs out like his dad or Sasuke, he would probably get annoyed by them, always getting in front of his face or tickling his nose. He still has his whisker marks that made a lot of girls giggle, thinking they are cute or stare in curiosity, and he still has his bright blue eyes, that make most girls blush if he looks their way. He is wearing his workout clothes, which are black sweatpants, and a dark orange t-shirt and black running shoes. He leaves the house wearing these clothes with his backpack, changes into his patrol gear, then changes back into the workout clothes when he gets back. As he turns around to leave he says, "Well, let's do making breakfast, yeah." "No, it's fine, you get changed and ready for school, I can handle breakfast, so please take your time. Also Fujimura-sensei will be here soon." She denies in that normal soft tone of hers. With another sigh, Naruto smiles good-naturedly at first before saying teasingly with a pout, "I swear Sakura-chan, bossing me around like my wife or something." As she began to go wide-eyed with a blush beginning to form and grow long with her mouth open, ready to deny the teasing, he interrupts with a chuckle, Sorry, I'm just teasing. I'll get on it, Sakura-chan." As he leaves the dojo waving over his shoulder, he doesn't see the blush that didn't die down, nor the look of longing on her face, before she snapped out of it and ran to the kitchen. The dreams again. Why are all the dreams recently about the Fourth Shinobi War? The dreams of his past life have become less frequent than they were when he was a kid. Though all the dreams recently have focused on the war. They used to cycle back to certain old experiences randomly or not have any dreams about his past life for large gaps at a time before they would come back full swing. Though now, all he dreams about is the war. God, I hope this isn't some sort of foreshadowing. As Naruto put his clothes in the washer, he thinks about the 5 years that have gone by since his father's death. Raiga Fujimura was helpful in paying for his expenses since he owed his dad a favor. Though now he uses them as contacts in the city. Reason being was he discovered the one supplying him with his weapons was Raiga. So they made an understanding. Raiga would feed him information going on in the underworld, and he wouldn't bust their deals. Taiga became like a sister to him after his dad died. She actually became his legal guardian, though sometimes it seems like it's the other way around with how she would mooch off him for food. Sakura Matsu has to be the complete opposite of the Sakura of his past life. Sakura came to help around the house after Naruto had gotten careless on a patrol a year ago. He had exhausted himself by going out after a cramped training session, and after sniping multiple guys in a building by jumping across rooftop to rooftop on the surrounding buildings as quickly as possible. He of course completed the objective, though he was exhausted at the end on his way home. Naruto had actually fell asleep for a moment when he jumped down from a building to get to his street, and fractured his wrist and radius on the fall. Naruto quickly blamed it on his part-time job working at a warehouse lifting heavy things. After hearing he got hurt, she volunteered herself to help him cook and other chores. She hasn't stopped since. At school he would do his best not to stand out. Though that is hard to do when you are taller than everyone, and you look like a Californian with whisker tattoos despite them being legitimate birthmarks. Why won't anyone believe him? They think he is a delinquent or something. Plus his natural athletic ability attracted a lot of attention as well. He would do his best to do the minimum approach, though that would just piss off most people, since it looks like he is looking down on them, as if saying I'm not even trying. On top of all that, his good looks and aloof easygoing attitude attracted a lot of girls without him trying much, to the other guy's chagrin. He was trying to lay low, but it seems he can't do that. He is one of the most popular guys in school reluctantly. I mean, it's not like he cares about it. The only reason he goes is because of his Taiga. She would kick his ass if he wouldn't go. He becomes like an ant before her female fury. It's not fair. It's like Tsunade and Sakura from his past life all over again. How does she make her kendo strikes hurt so much anyway? Oh Inaruto her up, I'm getting tired of waiting on you. Speak of the devil. Naruto just sighs as he finishes putting on his black t-shirt with an orange collar and putting his khaki-colored school jacket over it, though not buttoning it, preferring to leave it open. He walks into the dining room to eat his breakfast where he sees Sakura and Taiga already sitting waiting on him. While one looks as sweet and kind as ever, the other looks mildly annoyed. She has short light brown hair, and she wears a green dress with a yellow and black striped shirt and white shoes. This is Taiga Fujimura. She turns to Sakura across the table and says chidingly, Sakura, you spoil Naruto too much, he will take advantage of you. Oi, I do not. She does all this even though I ask her not to. She is just a really sweet girl, unlike some moocher I know. Naruto trailed off, only to freeze in his tracks, as he felt a very terrible aura emitting to his right. He stiffly turns to face it, and like a deer staring down a shotgun, he freezes in horror. Taiga looked absolutely evil right then. Her eyes were shadowed, but her eyes were gleaming red dangerously, and there was an image of a bloodthirsty tiger with large fangs staring down at him. To make things worse, she pulled out her dreaded Bakken out of nowhere, and began to calmly stroke it. She finally said, what was that? I promised Kirisugu that I would be your guardian until you grew up to be a respectable adult. You don't want to make my duty difficult, do you? Thankfully for Naruto, Sakura intervened. I'm not spoiling him, he just looked tired is all. As she handed him a bowl of rice. TCH, making my duty difficult every day. She was interrupted though when Naruto commented on the miso soup he tasted. Ah, Sakura, this miso soup is great. Well, you taught me well, senpai. What they didn't notice was the dangerously growing twitch Taiga had. It was too late for Naruto though. She pulled out her Bakken out of nowhere again and exclaimed, listen to me, damn it. And she smacked Naruto on the head, knocking him out of the room. Only then did she notice the time and she ran out of the house, saying she needed to still grade the tests. Naruto had recovered and was helping with the dishes when Sakura said with a slight sweat drop, Fujimura-sensei seemed a little more tense than usual, huh? No, that happens a lot, though pulling out the Bakken twice in one setting is rare. He thought with a sweat drop, oh, well, that's Taiga ni for you. They had heard on the news that there were more gas leaks going on in Shinto. He didn't believe it though, it smelled of MAGECRAFT. He thought about going on his night jog again tonight to check it out. The need to investigate it became stronger when he saw police cars zoom by them. Sakura interrupted his thoughts when she spoke. What could be happening, senpai? I don't know, but we should let them handle it. Don't worry, Sakura-chan. Okay? She replies in her soft tone. Later on at school we find Naruto walking to his homeroom with a bored look on his face with his hands in his pockets, ignoring the whispers and stares he gets as he passes by the crowds. Ha, I swear, it's like they don't think I can hear them talking about me. The conversations about him though stopped when someone else walked to her homeroom. That someone was Rin Tasaka. Rin has blue eyes, long black hair, which she styles into pigtails tied with black ribbons. She wears the standard Himura girl's uniform accompanied with a long red coat. She is apparently the idol for the male students here. She seems nice enough to him, though he never really talks with her. She is in a different class. They walk by each other without sparing a glance to each other. At least in Naruto's mind, once he passes her, Rin looks over her shoulder to watch Naruto as he walks into his homeroom. With a sigh, she follows suit and walks into hers. Naruto sits in the back of his class looking out the window waiting for his scary guardian adoptive sister homeroom teacher to show up. He finally hears a steadily growing voice that sounds suspiciously like late before he sighs and closes his eyes and waits for the train wreck. Finally she comes in running and jumping, good morning, before crashing into her desk. Of course you have a couple students asking if she is alright, though some decide to antagonize her by calling the nickname she hates Tiger. Just another morning for him. She tells the class of the new curfew that is in effect due to the recent accidents going, so most activities will be cut short. Which gets Naruto to narrow his eyes in suspicion. Do a couple of gas leak incidents warrant a city-wide curfew? Whatever, he isn't gonna stop his patrols anytime soon. Taiga leaves the class for the next teacher to come in, Seiichiro Kuzuki. Naruto has always been suspicious of him. The way he walks and carries himself, the look in his eyes, they all scream I am a trained killer. Of course, when you have been dreaming of killers and trained soldiers most of your life, and you become one yourself, it's not hard to notice, which of course this means that he could possibly know he is one as well. I'll have to watch myself around him. He thought as Kuzuki continued the lesson. He had heard during lunch that there was a homicide last night. That was what the police cars were rushing over to this morning. Apparently it was due the death was caused by a long spear or sword-like object. Pretty strange use. Must be a nutcase. Normal killers resort to guns or knives, not spears. Maybe he should go on patrol more often, he might be able to prevent things like this. Idly though he remembered the cynical words of his father, saving one life means not saving another. He understood, if I'm at one place saving this guy, it means I can't be there to save this one. He thought. Shadow clones would be really useful then. He thought jokingly before turning serious again. Doesn't mean I won't try though. I'm not gonna break my promise to Dad, because I still don't go back on my word. He thought determinedly. Suddenly though he stopped, his senses were going haywire. Prana was getting thrown around all over the city. The hell? When did so many Magi get here? God, none of this makes any fucking sense. I can't go on patrol today. My mind isn't in the right place. And not being focused can get me killed. Walking home though he suddenly felt a surge of prana before him. He looked up to see a little albino girl in a purple outfit with a purple hat walking by him with a smile on her face. Suddenly she says darkly, "If you don't hurry and summon your servant, you're gonna die, Ani-chan." He turned around to face her, only to find nothing. No one should be able to get the drop on me and leave my senses so easily. Especially not a little girl. He thought worriedly. Taking this event as a sign, he hurried home. After a lecture from Taiga, and a threat with the dreaded Bakken for being out so late, dinner finally started. Sakura helped with dinner again, and Taiga mooched again. And after, well, good night, said a shy Sakura. Yeah, good night Sakura-chan, said Naruto with his wide grin. Take care of her Taiga-ni. Yeah, leave it to me, she exclaimed enthusiastically. Come on Sakura-chan. Naruto watched them go with a smile before turning around and closing his door. Naruto was now in his workshop out back, cleaning the most recently used guns, and sharpening some of his kunai. His hands drifted over a certain customized knife, savoring its beauty. It was always therapeutic for him in a way, keeping his nimble hands busy, reminding him of his purpose in life. To protect those who can't protect themselves and fight for his precious people. To be a hero, even if no one ever knows who their hero is. As long as an innocent is saved through his actions, he will be satisfied. Because he is Emiya Uzumaki Naruto. Son of Emiya Kirisugu and the reincarnation Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. And saving lives and being a hero is the least he could do to live up to those names. After another morning of Sakura spoiling myself and Taiga mooching, with Naruto calling her out on it only to get the bloodthirsty tiger image, not the cute one in class, and her putting her hand on her Bakken again to threaten him, he still doesn't know where she pulls it out from, and Sakura separating them, we find Naruto and Sakura having a conversation. Hey Sakura, I have told you this so many times, you don't need to come on the weekends to help, I'm sure you have your own plans, Naruto says tiredly. No, I really don't. I don't really go out to have fun on weekends. She paused here a little as a small blush dusted her cheeks, unless I have dates or other personal matters. She finished with her usual sweet smile. But still you shouldn't push yourself so hard for my sake, okay? Think of it as a request from your Naruto-senpai. He finished with a big grin. Understood, senpai. He isn't stupid. Naruto knows Sakura likes him, though why or how much is a mystery to him. In a normal world, he would have asked her outright then. In a normal world, he wouldn't have to patrol every week and kill criminals. In a normal world, he doesn't exist, because he isn't normal. Walking to homeroom, Naruto listened to the conversations going around the students. Apparently Shinji Matu got rejected by the Tasaka girl, and now he is taking it out on the new recruits in the archery club. Great, another douchebag with an inferiority complex. How that guy is related to his sweetheart like Sakura he will never know. Oh, well as long as he doesn't bother anyone I know or piss me off, I'll let him have his fun. I mean, I kinda feel sorry for him, it's guys like him that usually have the tiny dicks. Shinji meanwhile was talking to a group of girls with his usual smile, before his face twisted into a face of pure indignation and then pure rage. Why do I want to have Ryder kill someone blonde? After another boring session of school we find Naruto in one of the trees by the archery dojo as the sun sets. Occasionally Naruto would take naps after school, since he is usually up all night working in his shop or on patrol. So he sleeps when he can, even if it's up in a tree or on a school building roof. He just needs his backpack as a pillow and he is fine. Though he is woken from his nap after a loud clash of weapons occurs. At first he thought he was hearing things or that he was dreaming, because he only hears weapons clashing like these when he dreams of battles in the elemental nations. But then he feels the prana saturating the air, and he knows that magecraft is occurring. So with a sigh, Naruto digs deep into his backpack and pulls out a familiar leather harness with two M9s, though now one is grey, and the other is black with a silencer attached. He takes off his skull jacket, puts on the harness and puts the jacket back on. He didn't bring his kunai pouches, so he will have to stick with his beauty on calf. He reaches down to his right leg and pulls his pant leg up to his knee, and reveals another holster with a large trench knife, similar to the trench knives Asuma used in his dreams. Of course the metals are different, but the design is the same. It doesn't mean he didn't add anything though. No, he welded a special silverish jewel to help him fight right on the hilt, making it a jewel trench knife in one of his two mystic codes. He grabs the knife in his right hand before slowly concealing his presence in the shadows. What he finds was the strangest things he has seen outside his dreams. Two men were fighting in the middle of the school courtyard. That wasn't the strange part, the first is what they were fighting with and what they were wearing. The first guy had blue hair that was short, but then he had a long ponytail from the back of his head. He seems to wear deep ultramarine full-body tights with white lines running down different places. He also has silver pauldrons on his shoulders. His weapon of choice is a red spear, and he is good with it. The second man had pale brown hair that goes past his shoulders and gray eyes. He looks like he is wearing archaic Greek armor, with leather straps over his shoulders and torso plated with bronze, and a tunic made of the same material. He really looked like a Greek warrior. All he was missing was the classic helmet and shield. Though he wasn't wielding a sword, he was nimbly dodging the lance, while firing numerous arrows blinding fast from his black bow. And whenever the spear would get too close, he would deflect it with his bow, so it is obviously strong. After deflecting another strike, the archer jumps back and glares determinedly while readying another arrow. Naruto is stunned watching the battle before him. He has seen shootouts and ended a couple of them himself, but to see a battle like this is awe-inspiring. Unfortunately for Naruto, part of his equipment glinted in the moonlight, allowing both combatants to take notice of his presence. Naruto looked down at his right hand to see his knife out of the shadows in the moonlight. Fuck me. Naruto knew he was compromised, to a stealthy retreat was redundant. He just opted to get the fuck out of there as soon as possible. Adding minor reinforcement to his legs, he took off, hoping to lose him quickly. He entered the school. Entering a dark hallway, he slowed down and entered the shadows, preparing to use time ult. He brought his knife up to deflect an incoming red spear to the wall beside him, and jumped back deflecting more strikes, before pulling out his gray M9 in his left hand, and held it up at the spear warrior. Think of how Snake holds his pistol with his knife in MGS4. With a sadistic grin on his face, amusement in his red-slitted eyes, Lancer stalks forward. You think you can beat me? I thought you were assassin at first, but you're just a human. You can't beat a servant, he exclaimed before rushing forward to run through Naruto's heart. Naruto just muttered, time alter. Double axle. Everything slowed down for Naruto as he sidestepped the spear. He could see the slowly widening of the spear user's eyes as he did so, but he just continued with his motions. He used his knife to deflect the spear up, giving Naruto an opening to the man's torso, where he pointed the gray M9 at the man's chest and fired twice. The result? A spear-wielding man was sent flying across the hallway and a small trail of blood following him. Much to Naruto's surprise, the man got up with a groan easily, while touching his chest that was not bleeding as much as he would like. How are you standing? That should have put you down, exclaimed a bewildered and slightly frightened Naruto. This is nothing. But what was that? That was no ordinary magecraft you just did. You shouldn't be able to wound me even a little, growled an irate Lancer. Well, I don't feel obligated to tell you, Naruto snapped back. Fine. I guess I'll end you here quickly. The spear began to oddly smoke before he yelled, Gaybold. Time alter. Triple axle. Naruto moved to the right in time to dodge the slow thrust, only to see everything go back to normal without him canceling his magic. Suddenly he felt pain. He coughed blood and looked down. He was shocked to see the tip of the spear coming out of his chest. He turned around to see the spear had actually bent and twisted toward him when he dodged. Gaybold, the cursed spear that pieces its enemy's heart no matter what. The thrust is just for show really, to prove the spear was even used. He then chuckled as he removed the spear from his chest. You put up a decent fight for a human. You managed to wound me, and have me use Gaybold. You could have been the seventh one. I'll give you my name before you die as a courtesy. Servant class Lancer, Kuchulin. He then proceeded to leave Naruto to his death. Fuck. This is how I die. Before I could complete my promise, he thought as he went unconscious. Naruto woke up with a gasp, and immediately his hand went to his chest. He looked down to his hand and saw his blood, and he saw the tear in his clothes, indicating the clean stab wound that should be there but isn't. He found it strange, but he picked up his gear and items along with a strange jeweled necklace and went home. He was walking through his home on his way to his workshop contemplating what he just went through, when his senses went haywire screaming for him to move. So he did. He rolled to his side unholstering both M9s at his enemy. And good thing too, because where he was just standing was that cursed red spear. He looked up at the man who nearly ended his life as he walked casually toward his spear, not minding that he has two guns pointed at him. I knew you were interesting, but surviving Gaybold, that takes it. The man known as Lancer chuckled. But to think I would have to kill the same person twice in one day, how annoying. Naruto began firing his black M9, but Lancer just deflected the bullets from him. I understand now. That gray gun is your mystic code, isn't it? It doesn't fire bullets like that black one, no, it fires concussive and piercing wind bullets. Truly powerful and dangerous anti-unit technique. Especially mixed with that magecraft of yours. Damn, I hate it when people read me so easily, Naruto thought nervously. I need to get to my workshop. I'll have a better shot at beating him in there, but I have to finish him quick so he doesn't use that spear's ability again on me. Naruto suddenly jumped out his nearby window, breaking it, into the backyard. With minor reinforcement to his legs, he sprinted toward his workshop. He rolled under a kick from Lancer and pushed open the doors. He began firing both M9s, trying to hold off Lancer, while he tried to reach for his necessary supplies. Neither of the combatants noticed the summoning circle forming in the corner. Lancer deflected the normal bullets and dodged the wind ones, though the runes he has on him helped make sure they only became glancing hits, just scraping him. It didn't mean it wasn't fucking annoying though. Naruto scrambled to his desk and hit it twice with his fist, causing a spring-loaded hidden drawer to reveal itself. He pulled out a sawed-off shotgun and pointed it at Lancer, who was walking toward him casually, until he saw the shotgun. Naruto smirked and said, "Beat this bitch." He fired it 2 rounds point-blank hoping for some damage, but he knew it wasn't over. If that guy can take his wind bullets no problem, he was gonna get up from that. So he got his second mystic code, his trench knife, and got ready for close combat. Naruto's hope that he would be injured enough that they would be able to fight evenly was dashed down, because Lancer somehow dodged his shot. And he wasn't happy. If there is one thing Lancer doesn't like, it devious methods. Apparently pulling out a surprise shotgun and firing it is devious because he fiercely charged toward Naruto. "I have had it with this charade," he roared. Naruto was desperately trying to parry the strikes, but he was failing. He was getting cut all over and he couldn't get a strike in himself to use his mystic code. He was being overwhelmed. A lull in the strikes that gave him his chance. Time Walter. Triple Axel. Naruto blurred backwards trying to gain some space before he prepared his mystic code. He charged it with his prana and called out, "Hien." A slash of wind-like energy flew at amazing speeds toward Lancer. He could only brace himself before he was hit. He skidded back a few feet, but held strong. He had his arms crossed in an X to protect himself. He also activated his runes to full power in preparation. Though that didn't stop the thin bloody cut to form diagonally from his left hip up toward his right shoulder and over his 2 arms. Lancer looked up at him fiercely, but Naruto just glared back saying, "I'm not gonna die here, you bastard. I made a promise. And I don't go back on my word. I can't die." And then the summoning circle activated in a bright light, surprising both fighters. And out of the summoning circle came a young petite woman wearing a blue dress with plated armor around her torso, plated metal gauntlets up to her forearms, and more plated armor from the sides of her hips down to the end of her dress. She has blonde hair done up into a bun with a blue ribbon, along with her bangs framing her face and bright emerald eyes. She charges forward and knocks Lancer away with an invisible weapon, causing a shock wave, throwing a weakened and surprised Naruto to the ground. She turned to Naruto and stated stoically, "Servant, Saber. Upon your summoning, I have come forth. I ask of you, are you my master?" Naruto doesn't answer right away. He was shocked and captivated at the same time. This elegant, beautiful, but deceptively powerful with those shocking green eyes just asked him if he was her master. What? He stuttered. "I am Servant Saber. Upon your summoning I have come forth." She repeated, "Master, your orders. From now on you will have my sword, and your destiny shall be mine. This completes our pact." Naruto just stares dumbly before shaking his head and standing up. "Yeah, I guess I am. I guess in the heat of the fight I didn't notice the summoning circle." She just nodded before she suddenly ran outside. Startled, Naruto followed regardless a few seconds later. When he got outside, he bore witness to Saber and Lancer were clashing all over the yard. Lancer with his cursed red spear and Saber with her invisible weapon. Though Naruto could tell it was covered by wind, it was his affinity. He was stunned by the beautiful swordsmanship Saber had. She flowed with all her strikes and parries. No movement was wasted. Finally, after another clash and Lancer was pushed back, he snarled, "Cheater. How dare you conceal your own weapon?" Saber just charged forward with a cold look in her eyes, and pushed him back again with a powerful strike. "What's wrong, Lancer?" She lifted her head up slightly, flipping her hair. "Standing around idly disgraces the reputation of lance users. If you are not striking, then the pleasure shall be mine." "Let me ask you one thing first," stated Lancer with a sadistic smirk. "You noble phantasm, is it a sword?" "Now what could it be?" "An axe. A spear. A bow maybe," she replied with her eyes shadowed. Lancer just scoffed. "Spare me the jokes, Saber." His spear began to smoke in a familiar manner, making Naruto go wide-eyed if she gets hit by that. "This is only our first meeting. Any chance of settling this fight as a draw?" he warned darkly. "I refuse your proposal. You shall be defeated here." Hien. A bluish slash of wind-like energy flew toward Lancer, breaking his concentration on his spear, as he had to dodge lest he get hit by that again. It didn't stop him from glaring at Naruto though as he stood by Saber. "Careful, that spear when activated will pierce your heart no matter what. I think it was called Gabolg." He answered at Saber's glare for interrupting, which caused her to nod in thanks. "How do you know though?" "Experience." "I see, a curse." "No, it was a reversal of causality, then. You must be Ireland's champion." She finished in surprise. "Gabolg, the enchanted barbs that can break any defense. It sets its opponent's heart as its goal, and the movement of the spear will change to accomplish it." To which Naruto nodded. He witnessed that crazy spear firsthand. "Is this the cursed red spear of that the Hound of Kulan wields?" "Well shit, I'm screwed now. You have a competent master that stopped you from getting hurt after he recognized the attack. I'm in trouble if I use this weapon and my opponent doesn't die," he said darkly. I wonder if this weapon is too famous or not. When a servant's identity is revealed, a servant should fight to the end, but my master is a coward, you see, telling me bullshit like return if your lances dodge. Are you running away? Chase me if you want, at your master's expense. Hold it. But then she contemplated his words and turned to her new master, who was currently on his knees panting hard and looking worse for wear. So regretfully she held off from chasing him. We will finish this, Lancer. We find our duo of master and servant in Naruto's workshop, where he is patching himself up with Saber occasionally helping. Meanwhile Naruto is asking questions. So I am your master? Yes, though it seems not a legitimate one. I figured, I didn't do that summoning circle. Even so you are my master, and I will never betray you, having made a pact with you. Well, that's nice, but I never introduced myself. I am Amiya Uzumaki Naruto, nice to meet you. Though Naruto didn't see it, Saber's eyes widened slightly before going back to stoic. Well, what's your name? I doubt it, Saber. I can't reveal my name. If I do, others might find out who I am and use it to find my weaknesses. Naruto just deadpanned. You think I am gonna tell others your name if it leads to your defeat? Arturia Pendragon, King of Britain. Wow, so King Arthur was a woman. Do you have a problem with that? No, none whatsoever. I know women can be strong. I knew plenty that can kick my ass. Good. So care to tell me what this whole thing was about? You don't know? It's the 5th Holy Grail War, a fight between 7 Magi for the Holy Grail, that will grant the winner their heart's desire. The Magus involved summoned heroic spirits from the past, as servants brought forth by the Grail itself to help them obtain the Grail. But God, another war. Naruto groused under his breath. Saber, although curious at what her new master meant by that, stopped when she felt another master and servant nearby. There is another servant with their master nearby, I will confront them. She ran off ahead without any confirmation from Naruto, which caused him to sweat drop and rush after her himself, after holstering another gun in his harness, and his trench knife in hand. He heard the sound of clashing to see Saber on top of the Greek guy from the school courtyard and oddly Rin to Sokka. Saber was dominating the guy, and Rin could tell too, given her order, Archer, vanish. Saber charged toward Rin next after seeing her enemy was gone, but the master was open. Rin tried to use Sea Jewels, but they were ineffective, and Saber kept charging ready to swing. Saber, that's enough. Saber stopped and turned around to find Naruto walking toward her. Naruto, this is Archer's master. Another master in the war. Naruto sighed before saying, look Saber, let's calm down for a moment and not slash first, ask questions later. Besides, I don't really understand the concept of this war right now anyway. You need to explain it for me in detail, and, to Sakura-rin. Hey there Miyakun. We find Naruto in his home trying to clean up and repair the scars of battle. That is the last time he fights in his house, repairing bullet holes from his own gun sucks. Saber was watching Rin diligently, trying to make sure she doesn't try anything. And Rin was repairing the window he broke when he jumped through it with her MAGECRAFT. I'm glad you can do this too, I don't have to do all the work now. Remarked Rin offhandedly as she watched Naruto fix his floor and walls from the bullets Lancer deflected the same way. Yeah, well, how else can I practice how to shoot without suspicion? Bullet holes attract a lot of attention, you know. Naruto said with a slight smirk. By the way, guns. What kind of Magus uses guns? Rin said in disbelief. A progressive one. A smart one. A deadly one. An awesome one. He listed cheekily in reply. An unnecessary brutish approach before MAGECRAFT, such as illusions, paralysis methods, and defensive bounded fields. She replied with narrowed eyes. In response, Naruto blurred in behind her and placed his gun at her head and whispered in her ear, that arrogance of Magi is what usually gets them killed from a single bullet. He then brings his jeweled trench knife up to her throat, further freezing her in her tracks, or a knife to the throat, and besides, he then blurs back to his previous position of repairing the walls and finishes, I don't only use weapons, I have my MAGECRAFT too. What MAGECRAFT was that speed enhancement? She questioned shakily. Then she realized what was at her throat a moment ago, was it a jeweled knife? You use jewels too? Well, I don't feel like telling you my MAGECRAFT, he replied, causing Rin to huff, and I only use the jewels to enhance my weapons. So they become your mystic codes. What is your affinity? Oh? Fishing for information, Miss Skolidal. She asked with a grin, you're gonna have to be more subtle than that. Whatever. Idiot. Said a flustered Rin before she coughed and composed herself. Anyway, I can't believe a Magus like you summoned Saber. You would probably be better off with Assassin. At seeing his blank face focused on her, she questioned, do you have any idea about the situation you're in right now? Well, Saber said something about a war. He trailed off looking at Saber, who nodded, and then continued with a pointed look at Rin. I would know more if someone didn't decide to come over uninvited and interrupt our conversation. Rin just huffed, crossed her arms, assuming Sundeer pose number 2, seriously, though the picture I used to describe the poses is on my profile through a link, and replied, well, excuse me for trying to make sure you were alright. At Naruto's surprised look, she continued, flustered once again, I mean I wanted to make sure that you didn't waste my time for saving you by dying again. You saved my life, oh back when Lancer stabbed me at school. So this was your jeweled necklace, he trailed off as he went to go get it from where he left it in his bag. Yeah, here it is. As he handed it to her, he smiled warmly. Thanks, you didn't have to do that, but you saved me anyway, thanks a lot. I'm in your debt, so if you need anything you know where to find me. He finished with his close-eyed grin and consequently didn't see Rin's ever-growing blush from the praise. Whatever it is. I just didn't want to be responsible for her death because someone saw our fight. She finished assuming Sundeer pose number 3, causing Naruto and Saber to sweat drop. But anyway, you have no idea what you got yourself into. I thought we already established that. You got yourself involved in a certain game called the Holy Grail War, which consists of 7 masters fighting and killing each other in an attempt to obtain the Holy Grail. Why do the battles take place in the city though? Wouldn't it be better to fight away from innocents and from those who don't know about MAGECRAFT, so it doesn't get revealed? Naruto asked incredulously. Because the Holy Grail chooses to reveal the masters in itself in the city. And because you can only summon it in the city at 4 major spiritual ley lines. I guess it's inevitable then, doesn't mean I have to like it though. He finished in thought. There should be a holy mark on one of your hands, right? Naruto glanced at his left hand and nodded, seeing the strange mark. The 3 command spells, those are the symbols of a master. Once every several decades, 7 masters are chosen, and each of the masters is given a servant, so that they fight each other for possession of the Holy Grail. I was chosen as one of the masters as well. As long as you have your command spells, your servant will obey you. They also give you the right to issue absolute orders, meaning you can make them do whatever you want, if it's against their will and honor. I'm sure that they have been abused before, huh? Probably, though it will decrease by 1 every time you use it, so most don't use it for frivolous or selfish means. You only get 3 command spells, so you should only use 2 if you must. If you use all 3 you are no longer a master. She then turned to Saber and said, you seem to be in an incomplete condition. It can be that he is incompetent as a magus. As Naruto finished repairing the last of the bullet holes, he turned and suggested, maybe during the fight, the summoning circle was disrupted slightly. That could be possible. It couldn't be that Naruto doesn't have enough power to materialize me, because he does. Nevertheless, it's going to be difficult for me to go into spirit form or replenish my own magic power, stated Saber stoically. Don't worry, if you ever need any ask, I got plenty, Naruto said with a smile, to which Saber nodded. Inside, however, and complained, if I were your master none of this would have happened. Boy, I'm perfectly capable. Our fight just interfered with the summoning is all. Whatever, let's get going, Rin replied haughtily. Oi, you gonna tell me where we are going? Naruto asked with a tick mark over his twitching eyebrow. God, Sundeers are annoying sometimes, but so damn cute. We are going to where the supervisor of the war is. Really? A supervisor of war? Naruto deadpanned. What is this, a sports game? Ha, whatever, lead the way so I can get this over with. He turned to Saber, let's go Saber. To which she nodded. But then he paused and looked at her. Hey Saber, do you have clothes other than the armor? We are going to be walking through town, and I don't think the armor will work for you, Naruto asked as they began walking toward his door. Yes, I see your point, subtlety would be better for now. At that, her body glowed and her armor dissipated to reveal her new outfit, which was a long-sleeve white-collared blouse with a long blue bow tie, a blue skirt that went to her knees, black leggings, and brown boots. Nice look, well, lead the way, Rin. Right? So the supervisor is a priest at Kodaman Church? Asked a curious Naruto. Naruto, I will watch the perimeter, informed Saber. Sure, go ahead. I'll be fine defending myself anyway, he replied, patting the gun under his jacket in its holster, to which Saber nodded. As Naruto and Rin entered the dark church, Naruto asks, so Rin, what kind of person is the supervisor? Well, he is my technical legal guardian, and he's an apprentice magus senior to me. I guess you can call him my second teacher. A priest doing something as heretical as MAGECRAFT and not be in trouble. The church allows that, said Naruto in disbelief. That is why you have to be careful with him. His name is Kodaman Kirei, my father's apprentice. I've known him for 10 years, and 10 years too many if you ask me. Rin remarked, only to finally notice the presence of the man they sought. And I did not want an apprentice that does not respect her teacher, states Kirei. Kirei has not changed much, he still wears a casual priest outfit and golden cross necklace. The only difference would be that he grew his shaggy hair out to his shoulders. When he stops in front of Rin and Naruto with his hands behind his back, Rin tells him, I brought you the 7th master. He is a capable, if not unorthodox magus, but the summoning went slightly wrong, so I couldn't help but watch out for him, she trailed off. While Kirei bowed slightly and filed that information for later, he asked with a deceptive smile, what is your name? With narrowed eyes, Naruto answered, slightly strained at the end, Naruto, Imi Uzumaki Naruto. That smile really rubbed him the wrong way. It reminded him of the Kabuto from his dreams. Kirei looked up at him with veiled surprise and repeated, Tamiya, Uzumaki Naruto. He chuckled to himself, reminiscing his fight with an Emiya 10 years ago, and continued, you are Saber's master, correct? Oh, he could taste the irony. It was all he could do not to laugh. Yes, I suppose so, though could you explain the Holy Grail War in more detail for me? Coming from the supervisor, I should be able to understand it perfectly when we are done. Kirei chuckled in amusement before answering with that fake smile of his. Of course, this is the first time Rin has relied on me, so giving me my thanks to you is not quite enough. First of all, now that you are a master you cannot quit being one. That command spell is a holy mark that has thrust this ordeal upon you. Are we clear? Naruto just scoffed. Of course, why would I quit anyway? I'm not so weak that I would quit something because it is unfavorable to me. I would just adapt to the situation until it becomes favorable. Regardless, there are only a couple ways out of this war. Death is the most prominent, but winning the Grail and getting your wish granted is the preferred option. He said with a vile smirk. The Holy Grail grants wishes? Naruto asked in disbelief. How is that possible? How could any magecraft be so powerful to grant any one wish? With the Holy Grail, your wishes can be granted, the filth within you cleansed. He answered with his arms raised with a smile. Yes, you can even start everything all over again. Therefore, covet this chance. If the time comes, you shall be thankful for the fact that you are a master. What if someone abuses its power? I am the supervisor for a reason. He trailed off with a smile that greatly unnerved Naruto. He felt that he should be greatly wary of the man before him. Kirei. Rin interrupted his thoughts. Stop talking in such a roundabout way. All I asked was that you explain the rules to him. She stated in an annoyed fashion with her hands on her hips. Kirei turned his head to the side and closed his eyes. Very well. This battle is called the Holy Grail War. A scramble between 7 masters and 7 servants. We do not voluntarily take part in such killings. It is all a ritual to determine who is the most suitable candidate to obtain the use of the Grail. If you doubt its existence, the presence of these heroic spirits should be all the proof you need. He stated while turning his eyes toward Naruto at the end. The servants are legendary heroes from either the past or the present, given flesh by the Holy Grail. Essentially they stand by their masters in spiritual form, and you can materialize them and have them fight for you when necessary. Yeah, well, there was a complication with the Miyakon's saber. Apparently the summoning was interfered, and now his servant can't go into spiritual form. She explained haughtily. This miracle of new resurrection can essentially be called Holy Grail. Having so much power, will be able to grant its possessor infinite power. Before this fact its authenticity holds no value. He said amusedly. Though it will only choose one person in the end. The Holy Grail is responsible for everything, be it choosing the 7 masters or summoning the servants. He raised his hands up again, as if he was preaching to an audience and finished. This is the Holy Grail War. A spirit-descending ritual whereby you are chosen by the Holy Grail and cross swords for his sole possession. Though there isn't a rule that says you have to kill the masters. Rin added, which caused Naruto to look at her. The Holy Grail is a spiritual body. Only servants, who are spiritual entities, can touch it. The war is actually the elimination of all the other servants than your own. That's nice, I won't have to kill you, Rin. He said to her with a smile. I'm assuming though that because masters have died before, that it is easier to win by killing the masters. The servant won't have a master to give them magic power, yes, though that just means they will try to find another master with command spells, because if they were summoned that means they want the Grail for a reason as well. So let me ask you, can you defeat your servant? Servants are very powerful. Not even servants, let alone masters, can defeat each other easily. But without masters servants cannot exist on their own, making it as you said easier to kill the masters. Though if you were to use all your command spells that would just make you an incompetent loser of Magus. Kirei continued smirking. If one were to do that I would ensure their safety, because that has long been the role of the supervisor throughout the Holy Grail wars that have taken place. He said, trying to look sincere by closing his eyes and placing his hand over his heart, making Naruto repress the urge to roll his eyes at the fake gesture. This is now the 5th time the war has taken place in this city. The previous war took place 10 years ago. I'm honestly surprised no one has noticed a war taking place 5 times. Said Naruto offhandedly. The people in charge of covering things up are good, huh? Past wars have been nothing but calamitous. Masters motivated by their own desires had forgotten what they had learned as magicians and began doing nothing but killing each other indiscriminately. Therefore from the 3rd Holy Grail War onwards, the association sent in a supervisor. That was my father. With his back turned he raised his hands once more looking up to the ceiling. I am succeeding his duties. With all due respect. This is one fucked up ritual. Naruto said firmly with his eyes narrowed angrily. Oh? Kirei looked to Naruto in amusement. First off, you have 7 potentially dangerous and powerful magicians, and you have incredibly powerful servants fighting in the middle of a city. You are endangering innocents and risking magecraft being known worldwide. Second, what if the Grail falls into the wrong hands and causes destruction? Don't you think an omnipotent wish granter is a bad thing for someone who has no problem killing people and endangering innocents to have? Said an irritated Naruto. Regardless of what type of personality ends up possessing the Grail, the Magicians Association will not intervene. All we regulate are the rules. If you don't like it, win yourself. A much better method than relying on others, yes. Wouldn't you want to prevent what happened 10 years ago? Kirei questioned. Naruto narrowed his eyes as Kirei continued. At the end of the previous war, an unsuitable person touched the Holy Grail. We don't know what that master's desire was. The only thing we do know is the mark left behind by that disaster. At Naruto's wide-eyed look, Kirei smirked and continued. That's right, the large fire with an unknown cause was a result of the last Holy Grail war. What's wrong, Amiya-kun? Asked a concerned Rin at seeing his troubled face for a split second before he went stoic. It's fine, don't worry. So what happened after? What was the result? There was none. Like I said, an unsuitable person touched the grail. Another person touched the grail before that too. However, that man kept evading battles, and the Holy Grail could not be completed. Once all 7 servants are present, the Holy Grail will appear by itself once enough time has passed by. But the Grail did not acknowledge the man who kept running from battles as its possessor. Kirei answered. And then said, in other words, even if you obtain the Holy Grail without fighting the other masters, it will be meaningless, right? The master that got the Grail first was just a naive person. At Kirei's silence, Naruto smirked at him and said, you were that master, huh? To a certain point. Naruto just raised his eyebrow. To a certain point. I lost my servant and was protected by my father, who was the supervisor. This is the end of our conversation. Apparently he is still sore about it, Naruto thought. The only people who are allowed to obtain the Grail are the masters who have control of their servants. When the last of the masters is left, the Grail will appear before the winner. So then, Imi Uzumaki Naruto, do you have the will to fight in this war? Naruto's eyes were shadowed, and he had an unreadable expression on his face. Kirei looked at him curiously, before Naruto's head looked up, showing his determined visage, and his nearly glowing eyes filled with power and determination. It almost made him step back in surprise. Almost. He has more backbone than that. Don't underestimate me. I will fight. And I will win, if nothing else to protect others, in case it falls into the wrong hands. Rin was taken aback at first before she smiled and began to walk to the exit, saying, then it's settled, let's go back now. Kirei though said in a booming voice to Naruto's back as he turned to walk with Rin, rejoice, young man. Your wish will finally be granted. Without a clear presence of evil, your wish cannot be granted. Even if it is something you can't accept, there is a need for evil to oppose justice. Saying this caused Naruto to turn to him with narrowed eyes. Your most noble wishes, and your most disgraceful desires hold the same meaning. But don't worry, you don't need to amend them. The dilemma you possess is righteous for a human. Naruto just scoffed, and as he turned and walked away said, keep telling yourself that. I'm sure that speech helps you sleep at night. As Naruto left the church, closing the door, Kirei gritted his teeth, seething at the blonde teen for his words. He would enjoy killing him. But not yet, he still has a fight to finish from the last war, and another Amiya to replace the dead one should be fine. Good luck, Amiya Uzumaki Naruto, I look forward to the finale. I have finished my duties for now. Stated Rin later on when they were on their way to their respective homes. Yeah, thanks for helping me so much today, Rin. You not only saved my life, but you helped me understand my situation. Thank you. He said with a warm smile, causing her to blush, and assumed tsundere pose number 3. Why yeah, well I won't go easy on you even if you flatter me, she exclaimed. Meanwhile Saber on the side noticed a master and servant heading their way. When they were finally in view, she exclaimed, Naruto. He turned over to Saber, and then looked to where she was looking, and saw the monstrosity of a man towering over the giggling little girl from yesterday walking toward them. He is over 8 feet tall, and his body is extremely defined and bulging with muscles. He has long wild black hair, his skin is a dark gray, he has pale yellow eyes, though his left is constantly gleaming and glowing a rather yellow light. He is bare-chested and footed, though he wears a Greek tunic and belt that are both covered with leather, that has metal plates sewn onto it. He also wears Greek metal bracers on both his wrists and his ankles. He also has strange protrusions coming out of his forearms. Lastly, he wields a massive clawback sword. Good evening, she said in a happy tone that was betrayed by the dark look on her happy face. As she curtsied. This is the second time we met. Rin worriedly said, this isn't good, this servant's power is incomparable. Pleased to meet you, Rin, she curtsied again. I'm Ilya, Ilyasvil von Einsborn, understand. Einsborn, Rin trailed off with a bead of sweat rolling down her forehead. I don't think any more salutations are necessary, since you'll all be dying here, she said with a small smile. Alright, I'll be killing you now. Do a berserker. The giant monstrosity of a man leaped into the air, roaring as he reared back his weapon to strike it down. Saber sprang into action, summoning her armor and invisible sword, and exclaimed as she ran forward, Naruto, stay back. Saber. Naruto exclaimed, surprise evident in his voice. He wasn't used to people telling him what to do in a fight. Well, he wasn't going to hold back now. This guy looked tough, mindless as he clashed with Saber, but tough. He might have to pull out all of the tools out of the woodwork for this one. After seeing Berserker counter Saber's expert swordsmanship with brute strength and raw yet unrefined speed, Rin commented, he is handling that huge sword like a toy, she said with a worried frown. Ilya though seemed to be having fun, if her happy cries for Berserker to go were any indication. Saber used her superior agility to run up the surrounding telephone poles and wires to get a better position to strike a berserker, but he wouldn't make it easy for her. He easily caught up to her and slashed at the wires she was running on. Naruto though was impressed. Saber's agility and grace reminded him of the ninja of his past self and their tree and water walking via chakra. Saber simply jumped from post to post before landing in front of Ilya and stared at her. She was thinking of her uncanny resemblance to Rizvil. They even had similar names. Was she a homunculus? She was debating on whether to question it or not, as Ilya cutely glared at her until Berserker came and swung his sword at the distracted Saber, who just barely brought her sword up in time. Only to be sent flying into a pole. Damn it! Exclaimed Naruto as he ran forward. Now Berserker, finish her once and for all, she said giddily. Berserker slammed his sword into the ground, causing a mini fissure, forcing Saber to jump and clash swords with him once more. He pushed her back though, and as Saber readied her stance to clash once more, Rin began firing magic bullets at Berserker, but he took it all without a scratch. Damn it. His body is absurdly tough, she complained. That is when Naruto came in. Sprinting behind Berserker as he jumped, he brought his jewel trench knife down toward his cervical vertebrae, hoping for a quick kill. Berserker though isn't a heroic spirit for nothing though. He brings his elbow around and slams it into Naruto, sending him into a wall. Naruto. Both Saber and Rin yelled. Ilya was confused though. Why would a master try to help his servant fight and protect them? Well, fuck, that hurt. He groaned as he got to his feet with blood falling down his forehead. There's no way you can win. My Berserker is the strongest hero from Greek mythology. As Naruto leaned back and moved his neck around, popping and cracking his bones back into place, he remarked, that would mean, he is Hercules. Or is it Heracles? How can you be so calm right now? Exclaimed Rin. Oh, I have taken worse before, besides I heal quickly. He remarked offhandedly before narrowing his eyes at his opponent in front of him. That's right, he is Heracles. He is incomparable to any servant you could have summoned. He is the most heinous monster. Continue, Berserker, finished Saber. Not so fast, asshole, I'm not done with you yet. He sprinted forward even as Berserker readied his sword to swing at him. He ignored Rin and Saber calling for him and simply ran forward. He switched his trench knife to his left hand quickly and braced himself before muttering as his veins bulged. Time Walter. Square Axle. To Rin and Ilya it was almost instantaneous. To Saber and Berserker he was moving fast enough to still see, but both would have been too surprised to react in time. Naruto rolled under the sword and under Berserker's legs. He quickly planted his feet and jumped once more toward his cervical vertebrae. Only this time he wasn't charging with his knife. Instead, he had his right hand open and reared back, and inside that open palm was a basketball-sized orb of swirling pure prana. And in that instant he slammed that orb of swirling destruction into the back of Berserker's neck, letting it grind into him, forcing Berserker onto his knees, before yelling and letting it explode outward, and further forcing him face down into the ground. Basengan. He yelled as the force of the blow left a small crater around Berserker's body. As the dust and debris from the attack cleared, Naruto was standing hunched on Berserker's back panting heavily, before he slowly started to catch his breath. He walked off his back and toward Rin and Saber. They both had a look of pure disbelief and surprise on their faces. A human wasn't supposed to be able to do that to a servant. Ilya had similar thoughts, though hers was more along the lines of he took one of his lives. But he wouldn't be able to again. Naruto kept walking toward the shocked duo, enjoying their response. I know I'm awesome and all, but women shouldn't let their jaws hang open like that, nah. He joked. They both blushed, though Saber's was less noticeable than Rin's. However, when they saw that Ilya was still calm, and Berserker hadn't faded away yet, they were suspicious. Naruto noticed their change and turned around. He did just in time to see Berserker twitch, and then move onto his knees while growling and popping his neck into place, before finally springing to his feet with a roar. He charged forward and swung his sword at Naruto. Naruto tried to lean back and dodge it, but he still got a slash across his chest, forcing him to jump back and fall on his knees. He held a hand to the wound and pulled out his gray M9 with the other. Naruto. Both Rin and Saber yelled again. Though Saber charged forward with new determination, clashing with Berserker once more. Meanwhile, Rin was trying to tend to Naruto. Berserker has 12 lives. For each of his 12 labors, you have to defeat him 11 more times if you want to win, exclaimed Ilya. She still hadn't expected for this to happen though. What in the world were you thinking? I can't save your life every time, Rin yelled at him. Naruto just looked at her for a moment before looking back to Saber and Berserker, clashing back and forth. Whatever, it's just a scratch and this is a war, right? People get hurt if they fight. Yeah, but servants are supposed to do the fighting, idiot. She yelled at him again. Honestly, what a stubborn guy. Pot, meat kettle. Was I just supposed to stand by here when I can fight? He demanded angrily. Rin was surprised by his outburst. She was also surprised when he got up again and took off his skull jacket, leaving him in his black shirt, showing the leather harness he had underneath. He had the black silenced M9 in the right holster. The left one for the grey M9 was empty since it was in his hands. There was also the pockets attached to hold the extra clips of ammunition. And in a bandolier fashion, on the straps above his left holster near his heart holds 6 large bullets in their sleeves. Those bullets are caliber of .30-06, which is 10% stronger than the .308 Winchester rifle bullet, and even surpasses the hand cannon class of a Magnum bullet. Therefore, a special gun of his that is in the third holster he attached to the harness before he left his house under the left one. As he kept his eyes on the battle before him, he put his knife in its extra sheath on his harness and pulled out the special gun. He popped it open to make sure it's loaded before flicking it up with his hand and cocking it. He pulled up the sentimental gun up and pointed it at Berserker. "Idiot. What can that gun do? My MAGECRAFT couldn't affect him. What makes you think that will?" yelled a frustrated Rin. "Because this gun is anything but ordinary," he replied simply as he pulled the trigger. The bullet zoomed to a target and actually pierced Berserker right in his chest where his heart should be. Saber turned toward where the shot came from only to widen her eyes in shock, seeing Naruto holding a very familiar weapon. In his hands was his father's still smoking Thompson Contender. Everything was silent. Nobody was moving. Berserker suddenly began to shake and convulse, however. Finally he roared in pain. Ilya was shocked. Berserker never acknowledged his pain to such a degree before. He usually has a huge pain tolerance. The origin shot. Naruto thought Dad's old mystic code. Bullets made of his ground-up ribs that contain the severing and binding traits of his origin. They truly are a magician's worst nightmare. Good thing he still had extra. "You should retreat." Naruto's statement broke everyone from their state of shock. His mana, along with his ability to absorb more, has been disrupted severely. Extra lives or not, if you do not recall him to recover, he will die and you will lose. He finished in a cold tone with narrowed eyes. Ilya flinches slightly before huffing and saying, "Fine. Retreat, Berserker." With a final roar of pain, Berserker dissipates. Ilya then stops as she walks away and says as an afterthought, "Next time we will kill you all." As she leaves, Naruto finally holsters his guns. With a deep and tired sigh, he turns to the two girls and says, "Well, I don't know about you two, but I am exhausted. 3 fights in one night, and I technically died in one. Ah, fuck me, I'm about to pass out. Let's go home before I do." They nodded, and as he bent down to pick up his school jacket, he fell forward, shy. "Naruto," was the last thing he heard before things went black. "What the hell is going on out there?" demanded an angry and desperate Naruto. Naruto looked at him worriedly before hardening himself and replying, "War, Madara is making his move." Naruto stood sheathed in yellow flame-like chakra shroud with numerous black markings before the Raikage and his Hokage and Bachan. Next to him was his fellow Jinchuriki Killer Bee. "I won't let you pass," roared the Raikage. "Brother, let us pass. Naruto has to whoop some ass. I promise to keep an eye on the guy." Killer Bee rapped. "What are you morons saying? This war is to protect you two. If you two are caught, the enemy's jutsu will be complete. I heard about what they are doing from Iruka-sensei. And you still want to fight? Are you morons? I can't stand by while everybody fights this war for me. If we win at the cost of everyone dying, I'll be the only one left." Naruto angrily yelled. "There's no meaning in that. I won't allow that to happen." As Naruto charged down as fast as he could in an attempt to make it past the Raikage charged at full power, exclaimed, "I am coming, Naruto." Naruto with a firm face replied, "I was left too many things to do." The Raikage sped next to him, lightning armor crackling, giving him amazing power, his big fist bearing down on his face, threatening to crush him. The Raikage struck, causing debris and dust to explode outward from the punch, only for Naruto to appear behind him unscathed, stunning his Bachan and fellow Jinchuriki, comparing him to his father in speed. With his back turned, he said, "I won't fail. As you said, Raikage, a savior doesn't make mistakes. So I won't. Exactly like my father. Exactly like I learned from him." After a moment of silence and a tired sigh, Kurisuga looked up and said, "The moon is really beautiful, isn't it?" Nodding absently and humming agreement, Naruto stated firmly with a slight teasing tone, "Yeah, well, since you couldn't become a hero and my past self was a hero, what kind of guy would I be if I didn't try to be one as well?" Then the teasing tone stopped as he said firmly, "I'll be the hero for you, the hero you couldn't be. I have to live up to my name, Imi Uzumaki Naruto, after all." He finished with a wide grin. Kurisuga then turned to him in slight surprise as Naruto continued, "Leave it to me, I'll accomplish both of our dreams." He finished with a determined smirk. Kurisuga then faced forward again and let out an amused but happy breath, and said somewhat happily, "Yeah, that's a relief." And so the famed Magus killer, Emiya Kurisuga, died at the age of 34. Naruto could only watch as his teacher, mentor, and above all father of 5 years, peacefully die after having his dream passed on to his son. Unknowingly, tears were silently streaming down his face as he stared up at him. He turned to face the moon and let out a choked sob and tried to smile. "Yeah, the moon is really beautiful, old man." Naruto woke with a gasp from his futon, only to immediately hold his head in pain. He looked down and noticed he was shirtless, but had bandages around his chest. He knew he might be healed by now, but just in case he kept them on. As he got dressed and went into the living room, he noticed Rin sitting down drinking some tea. "Good morning, I made myself comfortable without your permission, Emiya-kun," she said with a smile. Naruto could only stare at her incredulously. "Why are you here? Man, you should get better tea here, even the tea bags. Get some of the triangular packs at least," she said with a mock-angry face. "But why are?" She interrupted him, raising her hand. "Hold it." She then smiled sweetly in a way that promised pain if you didn't comply. "First, express your gratitude for carrying you all the way here." Naruto raised an eyebrow before remembering he passed out from exhaustion after the long night. "Oh, that's right, I passed out from exhaustion," he said, bumping his fist into an open palm. "When we were wrapping your slash from Berserker, it was already healing by itself. My guess is that since Saber has the ability to regenerate, the ability must have passed on to you." Naruto just waved her off and started picking at his ear with his pinky before saying, "Nah, I have always healed that fast." He looked at his pinky and wiped it on a nearby napkin, making Rin wrinkle her nose in disgust, before she registered what he said. "What? You have always regenerated like that?" she exclaimed in disbelief. "Yeah, is that so hard to believe?" "Yes. Well, I do." He huffed, crossing his arms with a pout. "Well, we have an impossible master. For a master to go out and fight with his servant, that's unheard of. If you die, Saber would disappear too, right? Whatever you saw what I did yesterday, I have the skills to at least fight with her and damage, if not kill servants. I may not be overpowering, but I am definitely surprising. And with everyone underestimating me and Saber and you by my side, we can't lose." Naruto finished his reply with a smirk. Rin blushed a bit but composed herself and asked, "What are your plans from now on, Emiya-kun?" "Honestly, I'm not sure I have a wish. Maybe to end this stupid war." He bitterly chuckled here before continuing, "I just don't want what happened 10 years ago to happen again." "I thought you'd say something like that. Look, servants don't serve the master gratuitously, they have wishes as well. They get summoned by the Grail because they want to obtain the Grail. So how do you think Saber will feel if her master doesn't really have a wish?" Naruto sighed and said, "She would probably be upset." "Yes, she would be upset. Look, if you just sit here thinking about what you could do, you let the other masters do what they want, and innocent people will die." Rin exclaimed, surprising Naruto. She continued, "A servant's fuel is mana. The more mana they stock, the more abilities they can use from their former lives." "What are you saying?" Naruto asked with narrowed eyes. "Because they are spiritual bodies, if they eat our souls, they can gain nutrition from us," Rin said gravely. "This means that there will be masters who will use their servants to assault humans and eat their souls to replenish their mana." "What?" said a stunned Naruto. "That was just too much. Assaulting civilians to suck out their souls for greater power. So what will you do? Are you just going to watch and stand by letting the other masters do what they want?" "I'll stop them then," Naruto said, grating his teeth. "I give up. You won't go out and attack masters of your own will, but when they are doing some bad deeds you will go fight them. You are contradicting yourself," she said with narrowed eyes as she prepared more tea and served to Naruto. "Look, I'm still new to this, so I don't really have another plan, alright? But I'm not gonna sit here and drink tea if I know innocent lives are in danger." "So you are going to be reactionary? That is stupid. That master from last night will come to find and kill us. Do you want to be caught off guard?" "Of course not. Look, you have to figure this out. We are on the same team, remember?" "Yeah." As Rin went to leave his house, Naruto stood by the door waiting for her. "You know you don't have to see me out," she said offhandedly, looking up at him as she put on her shoes. "Yeah, I know. But I wanted to," he said warmly, causing her to look up at him with a small blush. "I never did thank you, by the way." He smiled warmly and finished, "So thank you for helping get home, Rin. I really appreciate it." She turned away and began walking out before she turned around with a serious face. "Look, from now on, it's better you don't see me as human anymore." As she closed the door, Naruto sighed and closed his eyes and thought, "Sundeers, so I have to defeat every master in the war. From last night's battle and what Rin just told me, it will be inevitable before innocents become involved." He sighed and began to walk away. "I should check on Saber. Regardless, I will do my best to protect not just the innocents, but my precious people." He finished, determinedly thinking about his Taiga, Sakura, and even Saber and slightly Rin. After searching throughout the house for Saber, Naruto finally decided to check the dojo, where he found her in the far corner, eyes closed, sitting on her knees. Just the epitome of graceful elegance. When Naruto walked over to her and stood a few feet away, she opened her eyes and stood up. "I see you have awakened." "Yeah, just recently." She got into his personal space and looked up at him. "You do not look well." "Well, I just woke up and I'm not really a morning person. Not to mention the dreams I had. But I'm fine now," he finished with a grin. "I see. Then I will advise you on your actions last night." "What, not you too?" he groused in reply. "It is troublesome for a master to take such actions." Naruto blinked, remembering the Shikamaru from his dreams, always saying that word before he realized what she said, and narrowed his eyes at her. Combat is my domain of expertise, and you must carry out your own role. There is no necessity for a master to fight with his servant, and there is neither a reason to do so, she said firmly. Now listen here, combat is my domain of expertise. I have been fighting since I was 11, and training before that. Don't you tell me not to fight. And just because it isn't a necessity doesn't mean it isn't impossible or illegal, Naruto said angrily, making her eyes whiten. If there is one thing Naruto doesn't like, it's being told not to fight when he can. And if I need to prove it to you that I can fight with you, and I can win with you even after last night, then something is wrong with that head of yours, Arturia, he exclaimed angrily, making her white eyes even whiter as she remembered his feats last night, and the fact that he used her real name. He then took a deep breath and sighed before saying, Arturia, I trust you. Even though it's been a day, I trust you. Can you trust me? Saber closed her eyes before sighing herself. You seem honorable so far and you want to defend the innocent, and you genuinely wish to fight alongside me. And to do that effectively we do need to trust each other. So yes, I will trust you. Naruto smiled before taking out his hand for her to shake. So partners. She smiled herself and took his hand. Yes, partners. Alright, we will win this war together, he said with his other fist in the air. A loud rumble echoed throughout the dojo, shaking the windows comically. Naruto held his stomach with a slight sweat drop, and Saber looked stoic, though she had a small blush, and Naruto said, maybe we should have breakfast first. Empty stomachs are our enemies. Let us eat, Naruto. Naruto just sweat dropped more at hearing her reply before they walked out the dojo and toward the kitchen. What is the matter, Naruto? Saber questioned without turning toward him. Naruto scratched his head while smiling sheepishly, saying, I was just wondering, with you being from Britain, are you okay with Japanese dishes for breakfast? Yes. As long as you can eat it, I do not mind. Extravagance is our enemy. Naruto sweat dropped. We got a lot of enemies, don't we? Perhaps Naruto just face faulted. We find Naruto in his shop tinkering with his weapons, thinking about the last battle. He, as much as he hated himself for it, stupidly underestimated a heroic spirit. He should be dead or seriously hurt at the very least. An awkward cracking metallic sound drew his attention to his hands. He was clenching them so hard in anger, he chipped the kunai he was sharpening. He took in a deep breath to calm himself and leaned back on the chair he was sitting in. I need to be more prepared. I can't relax anywhere. I wouldn't be caught flat-footed and fight on my enemy's terms again, he thought determinedly. He leaned forward after some thought and got back to work. He had to go back to what he did best, being unpredictable. After all, who said he had to fight fair? He turned to a particular file cabinet filled with various techniques, projects, and theories for new techniques, and modifying current techniques. He opened it up and pulled out a couple files. After glancing at the titles of the projects, he smiled deviously. Naruto was getting ready for school after working on his weapons in his shop when he remembered he had a new and unexpected guest, that he has no way of knowing how to explain how she came here. He groaned mentally since he knew his Taiga knee would blow it out of proportion. He shouldn't just hide her though. How do you even hide a person from someone like her anyway? He might as well get the introductions over with. But not right now, he doesn't need the drama until after school. So after packing his backpack with his Mystic Code Grey M9, the Black Silenced M9, his harness, extra ammunition, along with a flashbang and a frag, and 3 pouches filled with kunai and pockets hidden within it. Yeah, so since Sakura-chan and Taiga aren't magicians, until we can think of a suitable cover when I come back from school, can you stay here? Asked Naruto sheepishly. You mean hide? Stated the ever-stoic Saber. Ugh, that makes me sound like a douche, somehow I know it, but yeah, in a sense. You won't have to hide long, just until I get back from school when we can think of a suitable cover. Just not right now. If we do, we will probably think of some hastily thought idea that will be easily seen through. And I really don't want drama so early in the morning from Taiga, replied an exasperated Naruto. Senpai, your breakfast will get cold, called Sakura from across the house. I'm coming, replied Naruto before he turned back to Saber, so just stay here until I get back, okay? There is food in the fridge if you want, just wait until we leave. I understand, I will wait here until your return, she replied stoically. Again. Ah, that stoic face and agreement really isn't making feel good about this, thought Naruto as he left the room. After another boring day of school for Naruto, he finally came home an hour before sunset. He walked into his house and over to Saber's room, so they could talk about what they will say to the frequent visitors of her presence. He opened the door to her room, only to find her in her futon, eyes closed, but tense as if anticipating movement. So she is a light sleeper. Most fighters are, thought Naruto absently. When he sat down, Saber opened her eyes and Naruto asked her, ready to talk? Yes, master. QI twitch. Why yeah, well it will only be a matter of time before either Sakura-chan or most likely Taiga discover your presence, so we should think of a believable cover for you. Such as a bodyguard. That could work. I guess we can say you are repaying a debt to my dad or keeping a promise. Naruto didn't see the slight twitch Saber gave off when he mentioned repaying a debt to his dad. Okay, it's settled. You are my bodyguard until further notice due to a promise to my dad. Either you or your parents made your prerogative on that one. Naruto finished nodding to himself. So what were you doing all day, Saber? I was sleeping. Really? For that long? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Yes, it is better I sleep as much as possible outside of combat to preserve my prana, she said stoically. Once again. Someone is coming, by the way. Probably Sakura-chan and Taiga. Good thing we came up with that cover, come on. He offered a hand to Saber with a smile, who though confused, took it anyway. As they walked toward the kitchen, they heard Sakura and Taiga conversing. They apparently set up the table, and dinner was already served if Taiga's enthusiastic cries were any indication. Sakura-chan, you are finally getting into serious cooking. Naruto could feel the happy smile on her face. Thank you for the compliment. Naruto could also feel the shy soft smile on her face as well. I can't guarantee the taste though. What are you talking about? There's no way something that looks this good can taste bad. Naruto turned to Saber as they kept walking toward the dining room. Hey Saber, come eat with us, I'm sure you haven't eaten all day. Saber looked surprised before she went stoic again and said, I should be fine with. Not hearing any of it. Naruto interrupted as he grabbed her hand and dragged her into the dining room to see happy, then surprised, then confused faces that seemed too shocked to move. Taiga was starting to eat already, and had a piece of food about to enter her mouth, though in her shocked state it fell in her lap. Sakura was an absolute statue. Hey everyone, sorry I wasn't able to introduce you both to her yet, she actually just got here after I came home from school. I was helping her get settled. This is Saber, she will be staying here for a while as my bodyguard. Naruto said as casually as possible, though on the inside he was absolutely terrified because Taiga was inching toward her Bakken, and even Sakura had a twitch above her eye. Naruto, Saber's voice actually seemed unsure about the situation they wandered into. Come on and take a seat, Saber, it's better to eat with everyone, right? Naruto said with false confidence. Yes, that is more efficient, but Naruto just sat down at the table and said with his eyes closed, don't be so shy. You are gonna be living here, right? By the way, it's gonna be 6 meatballs a person, Taiga. That is when Mount Tiger Fujimura erupted. She then faced Saber with tiger-like teeth and angry white eyes, with the cute angry tiger roaring behind her, and yelled indignantly, I shall not allow this. Naruto just covered his ears and silently curled up, hoping to brace the eventual beating we'll receive. It wasn't very far as the cute tiger turned into the bloodthirsty one reserved for disciplining Naruto, as Taiga turned her attention to Naruto, and said in a menacing voice, Naruto, what in the world happened to you? Bringing a foreign girl like this? This isn't a hotel. Okay. She finished glaring at him while the tiger behind her licked the drool dripping off its fangs. It's fine, alright. He finally gathered some courage to face the evil apparition before him. It's as big as some hotels. 1 or 2 people won't hurt, besides she is my bodyguard. Taiga didn't really hear the last part though, 1 or 2 people. Her demonic look returned with a vengeance as she slowly began pulling her Bakken out from behind her back, and said in a deceptively sweet smile and voice, Naruto, don't tell me you are hiding more. And Sakura added fuel to the fire by looking at him with a sad, shocked and disappointed face, with her hands holding her face, saying, Senpai, is that true? Boy, do you think so little of me? What's with these overactive imaginations? Naruto exclaimed indignantly, don't make it sound like I'm a kidnapper. But, said Sakura in an unsure voice. Besides, where is she from? Demanded Taiga. She's from Britain, he was interrupted by the woman again. From Britain, said Taiga as if she was amused by the supposed excuse. That is hard to believe, Sakura agreed with her apparently. Boy, where is the trust and love? She is here according to a promise to my dad. Naruto exclaimed with the tears flowing down his cheeks, hunched over in defeat. Like I'm gonna believe that crap you just spewed off the spot, declared an irate Taiga. Besides, it's not like Hirasugu-san had any foreign acquaintances. Well, maybe he did, she finished, trailing off unsure. Right, so. Even so, this is suspicious, she declared as she got right in his face. She then turned to the silent Saber and questioned angrily, hey you, what are you here for? Naruto tried to answer, but before he could even say anything as he opened his mouth, Taiga gave him the death glare with her red demonic eyes, and said in a false calm voice, Naruto, shut up. Which quickly made him close his mouth in fear. Why wasn't this going the way he wanted it to? She then lifted her glare on Naruto, making him silently sigh in relief, and looked up to Saber expectantly. Saber just coolly regarded her out of the corner of her eye and answered stoically, I am just abiding by Kurasuga's words. To protect Naruto from any and all enemies. This of course, wilted Taiga's resolve in the matter visibly, before she gathered it once more and said confidently, standing up with her hands on her hips, alright. If you are going to go that far, I want to see how good you are. You aren't gonna. She interrupted Naruto though by saying confidently with her cute angry face, that's right. How good you are. She accentuated her words by raising her bicep and tapping it with her hand with each word. She also had her comically angry eyes and voice on. Though Naruto did wonder why no one but him gets the actual demonic and angry faces and voices. Plus that damn bloodthirsty tiger. He never gets the cute one directed at him. It's always the scary ones. Meanwhile, Sakura's sweat dropped watching the emotions on Naruto's face, ranging from confusion to anger to fear to depression. Taiga decided to settle the score in the dojo with her kendo skills. This would have been a good idea against anyone but Saber. She is specialized in swordplay. So while Naruto sits cross-legged on the floor with Sakura in season next to him, Taiga stands before Saber in the middle of the dojo confidently. With her bakken in hand she says, "I will allow you to stay if you are stronger than me. If not, I shall have you go home." Okay. Saber stands there before her so stoically she almost actually seemed bored. She replies, "That sounds acceptable, but I do not understand your logic." "Don't you get it? As they say, lions leave their young at the bottom of a ravine." She answered back in annoyed Taiga. Naruto facepalmed, "This ridiculous." Naruto then felt really cold. He looked up and nearly had a heart attack. He saw Taiga looking at him with her eyes shadowed and glowing red with the bloodthirsty tiger behind her licking blood and drool off its fangs looking at him. She was also stroking her bakken and deceptively smiling at him happily. She said in a sickly sweet voice to him, "I said shut up, Naruto." He managed to squeak out a hi. "Besides, we are doing all this just for you, right?" Saber then once again stoically said, "I understand. Basically I need to convince you." Taiga just raised her fist with a tick mark above her eyebrow and said angrily, "What? Why do you sound so confident? Just you watch it going to be hard to convince me." She finished with a battle cry raising her bakken to the air to strike. Sakura was frightened at her worried whisper of sensei. And her hands moved to the front of her mouth in anticipation. Naruto just glanced at Saber and noticed her flex her right hand in preparation. "Hey-ah." Taiga swung her bakken down with a cry, but she noticed Saber wasn't in front of her, and her hands felt really light. She looked down to see she didn't have the bakken in hands anymore. With a shocked face she turned around to see that Saber has the bakken in her grasp. Naruto just smiled uneasily, while Sakura seemed more worried. She didn't want any more competition than necessary for Naruto's heart. Saber said simply, "Have I convinced you now?" Taiga just slowly turned to Saber while pulling a second bakken out of nowhere behind her back yelling, "Don't assume you've won just like that." She gave out a battle cry once more as she charged towards Saber, while the bakken in Saber's hands poofed into a cheap colorful bouquet you usually see in magic shows, slightly bewildering Saber for a moment. Taiga though swung down her bakken again yelling, "Victory is mine." Only to notice that she lost her bakken again. She turned around with a comical shocked face to see Saber with her bakken in her other hand. She could only utter softly, "Huh." Saber dropped the bouquet and held onto the second bakken she acquired by the grip and said, "I can go on if you wish to continue, but there should be no need to do so." She then walked up to the still shocked in place Taiga and tapped her on her head with the bakken. Taiga, as dramatic as ever, moaned softly while swaying slowly to her knees with the tears streaming down her face. She began whimpering before crying out, "Naruto got taken away from me by some weirdo." Naruto facepalmed again and muttered, "What do you mean weirdo?" After that show it was time for bed. Though Taiga and Sakura decided to spend the night to make sure he and Saber don't do anything. They convinced Saber to sleep in between the both of them, even though she wanted to sleep in the same room as Naruto to protect him as her bodyguard. Though Taiga wouldn't budge and with Naruto's insistence she reluctantly agreed. Though when she asked Naruto while she understood their conversation earlier in the day before dinner, she wanted to know why he introduced her to everyone, Naruto simply told her simply, "I felt like it," and walked to his room. Itadakimasu. It's now morning and after a combined effort from Naruto and Sakura, we find the group of four having a rather large breakfast before they go to school, when Taiga notices something odd about Saber. "Nah, Saber-chan, for a foreigner, you are pretty good at handling chopsticks." "Yes, I am used to it," she answered back stoically while continuing to eat. But it seems all was forgiven between the two as Taiga noticed she was about to eat tofu without any sauce. So she grabs the sauce and hands it to her saying, "Ah, that sauce. This is what you should put on tofu," she told her with a smile. Saber smiles appreciatively and says, "I see. I thank you for your advice." As Saber pours it and begins to eat it, Taiga grabs her own bowl and asks Naruto to refill it for her, to which he tells her jokingly, "Don't fall asleep later because you ate too much." "I'll be fine. I wouldn't be able to last until noon if I don't eat this much." She then continues in a mischievous voice, "And even Sakura-chan eats onigiri after morning practice." Said girl looks up surprised and says, "Why you knew?" Naruto couldn't help himself as he joined in on the teasing as he scooped up some more rice for Taiga saying, "A lot of strawberries have been used lately so." A light blush began to grow on Sakura's face at this revelation, as "Senpai, even you." She then looked away from everyone in embarrassment. "Here's your bowl Taiga-ni." Saber though decided to enter the conversation and unintentionally teased Sakura by saying, "Sakura, do you always think about food?" Naruto choked on his food, and Sakura uncharacteristically widened her eyes and leaned back in surprise, with a large blush now on her face, and exclaimed, "Oh, of course not." and in a hurry to change the subject she reached for the remote and turned on the TV. The news then described an incident where 50 people were found top of that the alarm was never sounded. Some master is out there doing this, I know it. But why? Thought Naruto, who was keeping a calm face despite his anger. After breakfast, Naruto was washing the dishes with Saber as Taiga and Sakura decided to leave, saying for him to put the futons away, since after a talk with Saber, they felt that no mistakes will happen. After they left, Naruto left not too much later for school. Saber was worried for him, of course, that is until she saw the equipment he was secretly packing with him. He really did remind her of Kiritsugu on that front. So after assuring her that even if there would be a fight, he would be able to handle it enough to escape, he also said he would be back before the sunset. Though she did say that if things were too much for him to summon her with a command spell to him, to which he agreed. As Naruto stepped toward the school grounds, he felt a faint prana signature nearby, like someone was trying to suppress it. He did his best to ignore it, as if he had no idea they were there so not to raise suspicion. It was even harder to keep his cool when he felt the barrier as he walked into the grounds. He barely contained the flinch his body desperately wanted to voice. But he kept his cool and kept walking, knowing he was being watched. As he was walking in a hallway looking for any more abnormalities, he noticed Rin was walking down the same hallway. He nodded his head toward her in acknowledgement and greeted simply, "Rin." Only to be ignored by an annoyed and angry Rin. He could hear her muttering under her breath, he just couldn't tell what she was saying. Though he could have sworn he heard an idiot getting mumbled out. School was over and Naruto was walking down the hallways to leave after another one of his naps. He had overheard several conversations about how Matu Shinji was absent, as well as that archery club captain Mitsuzuri Ako being missing for a day. It wasn't really hard for him to blend in and overhear conversations. I mean, he does have the mind of a ninja. Apparently, though, she was last seen with the Shinji guy. As he kept walking absent-mindedly, he noticed a nearby presence and saw Rin at the top of a flight of stairs. She was looking down at him with a deceptively calm look. "Rin, nice to see you again. Or not if your silence is anything to go by." Naruto calmly said to her while discreetly he was tensing his muscles ready to move while thumbing his backpack, ready to access its contents. He could feel her intent slowly growing. "Emiya-kun, do you know how much of an idiot you are?" she said as she walked down the steps. Well, it's hard to say really. Lots of times I may get called an idiot as an insult or as a joke by Taiga and Iya recently though lots of times I have been told I am a lot smarter than I look and act. He retorted as if he was actually contemplating her question seriously in an obviously fake happy tone manner. This of course caused a slight twitch to form above Rin's eyebrow, though it faded as she regained her composure. Sort of. For a master to walk around idly without his servant, that's like saying please kill me. Her annoyed angry-looking face returned as she began rolling up her left sleeve up to her elbow, saying, "Gosh, it makes me so angry seeing such foolishness before me." Naruto though just tensed his muscles more and stayed quiet, already thinking of his course of action. "It's a good thing no one is around right now, Miyu-kun." She raised her forearm up as numerous light blue glowing lines traced all around it and continued, "You can run, but it will just be more painful for you, because I will be the victor in the end either way." I think she forgot about my little demonstration last night. Naruto thought in amusement. Despite her advancement, Naruto still hasn't even moved a facial muscle from his original calm facade, which was secretly unnerving her. She continued, "Regardless though, it's my policy to not let a chance pass me by." She finally pointed her finger at him, and said in hope to scare him with mustard confidence in her voice, "Do you know about the Scandinavian curse spell called Gando Shot? It worsens someone's condition with just a point essentially." Naruto then closed his eyes and dropped a small object from his sleeve. The moment it hit the ground, a large plume of smoke filled Rin's vision. A smoke pellet, she thought in surprise. When the smoke cleared for her, he was gone. She then went to track his signature, though it was difficult, he was doing a good job of suppressing it. She followed the signature to the other side of the school, thus making it darker since the sun wasn't shining into the windows. She suddenly had a bad feeling about this. The signature was impossible to trace now. Not because it was somehow completely suppressed, no, it is now flooding the area from all sides. She can't tell where he is or where he may come from. Rin then began to dart her eyes around, in an attempt to catch a glimpse of anything. Then she heard a light thump sound to her right. She turned to face it but saw nothing. She heard it again, though this time behind her. Nothing. To her left now. Nothing. Behind her again. Nothing. Yes, she was nervous now. She then fired 4 magic shots at the 4 directions where she heard the noises. Only to hear nothing but them impacting a wall or door or locker. No pain grunts or anything. Suddenly, 4 spots around her began to glow a dull blue. She only had time to widen her eyes before she found herself trapped in a square gray-blue barrier that seemed to ripple and give off a light hum, anchored at the corners by knives. 1. The barrier surrounding her illuminated the hallway, revealing the culprit casually leaning against the wall directly in front of her with his hands in his pockets. He did though have some extra accessories. He had 2 pouches on either side of his thighs, and one on his lower back. His jacket was open, revealing slightly his leather harness, also partially revealing guns holstered in it, and his trench knife in a sheath attached to his harness on the right side of his chest. He still had the same expression that she saw last on him as well. Even his eyes were still closed. He then finally opened his eyes and walked up to her, stopping in front of the barrier, and addressed her calmly. "So Rin, I thought you were gonna be the victor." Rin gritted her teeth in frustration and fired several shots at the barrier with no effect. This barrier is special. On top of a normal barrier, it is encased in high-speed cutting winds. Nearly anything that will come in contact with it will be shredded instantly. Naruto said calmly again, but then demonstrated by taking a pencil out of his pocket and carelessly tossing it at the barrier, only for both of them to watch it grind and get shredded into dust within seconds. This made Rin wary of using her gems on it. Plus she wasn't prepared for this kind of barrier. Any further thought or action was halted when a scream rang throughout the school. They both turned toward the sound and back to each other. "We have to check that out, Naruto," said Rin. Naruto, though warily, nodded and released Rin. He then followed her to the source. They found a female student passed out on the floor. Though they both could sense it, her mana was sucked out of her. They looked at each other and nodded, though Naruto did say, "Rin, can you take care of her? I'm not proficient in healing." "Of course, I should be able to handle this." She then knelt down beside her and got to work. She closed her eyes, held a red gem over the girl, and began muttering various phrases. Suddenly though she exclaimed in a frustrated way, "I can't concentrate, can you please close that door?" Naruto just rolled his eyes, but acquiesced to the demand. Only to feel a burst of killing intent focused on Rin. He reacted immediately, pulling out his trench knife and deflecting away some nail-looking steak thing. From where it landed it faded away almost immediately. Rin though was understandably shocked. She was nearly killed without even knowing it. "Emiya-kun." "Rin, finish shielding her." Naruto gave her no time to argue as he sprinted out of the school, but stuck to the shadows. No need to paint an obvious target walking around like an idiot in the open. As he snuck around the courtyard toward the archery dojo, he began to feel the familiar intent as well as the watcher from the morning. If he was right, they are the same person. Most likely a servant if that strange weapon was any clue. So stealthily, he entered the woods and climbed into the trees, hopping from branch to branch in the cover of darkness, similar to his past self. As he was moving, he stopped, perching himself on a branch as he saw a figure hiding behind a tree, poorly. He is probably the master of the resident stalker nearby. Naruto though had to jump off the branch he was on to avoid another attack from a stake, though this time it was in the form of a slash, and he got a cut across his bicep for his troubles. He landed on the ground, but fell into a roll to brace the fall. He used his momentum to roll back into the shadows and blend in. The servant was faster than him, he had to strain his senses to catch his movement. Naruto took a deep breath and pulled out his gray M9, and held it in his CQC stance, once again, Snake MGS4. He closed his eyes to focus his senses. He felt the servant's signature literally flying, zooming, all across the small forest around him. It's almost impossible to predict the movements until the last second. He suddenly had to deflect another strike from the flying stake and roll out of his cover. He fell into a crouch and pointed his weapon at the servant before him. The servant was not that distinguishable in the darkness, but he could make out that the servant is a woman, a very curvy woman with very long hair that falls to her feet. She also was in an interestingly provocative crouching position. He hesitated for a moment before he began firing at her, only for her to dodge easily and blend into the trees, not unlike how he did himself, which caused all his missed shots to heavily damage the trees with his wind bullets. She can find me easily no matter where I blend into, not to mention she is blindingly fast. I'm not out of this fight yet though, but I don't want to resort to my project just yet. I have to figure this out. She isn't just going to let me summon Saber either, so I have to make do for now. Naruto thought as he placed his back closer to a tree to eliminate at least one blind spot. Suddenly he heard the sound of chains and looked up to see the woman descending upon him like an eagle with her talons being her stakes. He deflected her strikes, but not without a couple scratches. Yeah, I'm so over this. He sheathed his trench knife and dug his hand in his right pouch, while holding his M9 in his left pointing forward, and grabbed 4 kunai. The strange thing about these is that they have red jewels in the center of the ring. He held them between his fingers and closed his eyes to focus his senses once more. Suddenly he heard a rather sensual voice from all around. I am surprised. Will you not use a command spell? Great voice projection, I hope she doesn't do the 8 vital point speech as well. Naruto thought before he answered, you must think I am stupid to give you an opening like that. You would take advantage of me the moment I focus on the command spells, and use that amazing speed to take me out immediately. It's what I would do anyway. Fufufu, is that so? You may regret it, trying to act tough. It's hard to take a servant-less master seriously, even if you are better than most. I shall alter my methods then. I will kill you gently. Well, how kind of you. He deadpanned in return. Naruto then felt her killing intent and turned to where she had just dropped down to. There. He let the kunai fly toward her just as she got her feet set from landing. She looked up to see 4 knives flying toward her, but not directly at her. They seemed to be on course to zoom right past her, but none will touch her. Then just as they were in her vicinity, they exploded violently with the force of a combined frag and incendiary grenade. A concussive explosion with frag, with the searing flames of an incendiary. Needless to say, she was caught off guard. But she wasn't a servant for nothing. Yeah, it hurt a lot, but she isn't mortally wounded. She glared at the former position of the blonde-haired master under her visor. She felt him trying to escape the forest. Amusing. But he pissed her off. Now she is finishing what she started. True to her class, she sped away to cut him off. She found him sprinting gracefully through the shadows, using the terrain to his advantage. She was honestly impressed with this master. He was good and capable. Unlike her own. Naruto was sprinting through the forest when he heard the sound he was starting to get annoyed with. Rustling chains. He saw the first stake flying at him out of the corner of his eye, and the owner not far behind, with the second one in her hand ready to end him. He narrowed his eyes as his veins began to bulge and muttered. Time Walter. Triple Axel. Time slowed for Naruto as he in mid-sprint, jumped forward and twisted mid-air, avoiding the first stake, while also using his twist's momentum to launch the 4 explosive kunai he had grabbed in his hand at the female servant. Using the speed boost granted, he reached for his trench knife and charged it with prana. He fired a hien following after the kunai, and finally began firing his gray M9 at her direction. Ida's eyes widened under her visor at the assault coming straight for her. If she didn't get out of the way, she could really die from that. Those explosives were bad enough, but the following attacks will kill her no doubt. A large explosion occurred, blinding all sight. The surrounding trees exploded into stumps, and splinters formed the attack. All of that in the span of 3 seconds, and Naruto was brought back to normal speed. He fell into a roll safely after his little acrobatic move, and stared at the cloud of smoke in anticipation, with his M9 still focused on the cloud. When the cloud cleared, there was no one in sight. The only evidence of any presence was the splotches of blood on the ground and bark. It wasn't as much as he would like given the circumstances, but he forced her to retreat. He couldn't feel her presence anymore. Naruto allowed himself a sigh of relief as he sat on his haunches in a tired manner, just as Rin arrived. What happened? There were so many explosions. Who was it? She asked in an almost worried tone. That was definitely a servant. No doubt, she was tough. And I'm sure she didn't use her full power on me, she was so fast. He answered tiredly. And the master? I thought I saw him, but I couldn't get a good look at the figure. I see. I was aware there were other masters at the school, but... yeah, I figured as much myself. Between that barrier and the fact that the servant was spying on us in the school grounds, agreed Naruto uneasily. By the way, I'm assuming that since you made it here, the girl is fine. Don't worry, I managed to keep her alive. That's good, nice job Rin. Smiled Naruto. This of course caused Sunya pose number 4, and her reply WH would. Why are you looking at me like that? Well, you did a good job, and I was wondering if you were gonna continue attacking me. She looked away a bit and closed her eyes. Well, it seems like my plans got spoiled a bit. So that's it for today. Why don't you come over to my house since you look tired after your fight? Meh, I guess so. Why not? Naruto is sitting on Rin's couch cleaning his wounds, just basic stuff. He wasn't that hurt this time. Well, Rin made tea. So Rin, about this master at school, do you have an idea of who it is? Well, I can sense her, but I haven't pinpointed who she is yet. Though what I am sure of is that the person is pretty vicious, because this person is willing to sacrifice all the students at school, just to make her servant more powerful. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he finished tending to his wounds and said, I thought something like this might be a possibility, especially when I felt that barrier. I just didn't think a student would be willing to do so. He finished with a grimace. Yes, but it doesn't seem like it's complete though, but once it's activated everyone within it will die of decrepitude. I'm not planning on letting mass murders slide. Neither am I will stop the activation of the barrier. That is actually why I was investigating around campus. Oh, that's why you were there so late. I admit it's a better reason than mine, said Naruto with a sheepish smile at the end. Yeah, pretty much. But, after seeing a carefree master walking around idly, I lost my cool. I'll say. He thought to himself. And that ended up being a digression. She finished with a sip of her tea. Sorry, he scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Anyway, I would like to make a proposal. Oh? Naruto said with a raised eyebrow. Rin then smiled. I would like to propose a truce. A truce? Asked Naruto with a raised brow. After today's incident, we have been exposed as masters, correct? The master at the school is vicious, and I would like to take care of that master before taking care of you. Rin placed her cup of tea down and continued. So why don't we look for that master together at school? She finished. I'm not sure if I can trust you though as my ally, no matter how temporary it is. Naruto replied with a serious look, you did just attack me out of the blue. I didn't say I was going to be your ally, I'm just arranging a truce until I destroy the force field at school. She shot back. So much for the enemy of my enemy, huh? Naruto said with a roll of his eyes. Of course. She stated haughtily, but then she softened her features into a smile and said, but for the duration of this truce I will help you, as long as you don't betray me. Look, if there is one thing you want to know about me, that is that I don't betray my comrades. Temporary or not. He shot back with steel in his eyes, making Rin widen her eyes in shock slightly at the fact that he considers her a comrade. But yeah, I'll agree to this. One less person after me, right? Naruto said as he stood up and held out his hand. I look forward to temporarily working with you. He finished with a smile. She avoided his gaze in an attempt to hide her small blush, and said while assuming Sunyear pose number 2, it might be for just a short while, but make yourself useful, okay? Naruto just shook his head slightly and took her hand to affirm their truce, and said with a teasing smile, yeah, I'll do my best, just try to keep up. We don't want you to get caught in another barrier, right? Of course Naruto happened to forget he was holding the hand of its Sundeer. Consequently, his hand was brought to the mercy of feminine fury. What was that, Emiya-kun? She asked with a sickly sweet voice and dark smile. Nothing. I just got lucky when I captured you, didn't I? Naruto squeaked out. Good. That is what I thought you said. She let go of his hand with a satisfied look. So, you got your father's magic crest before he died? She asked lightly. Yeah, it took some convincing, but I was able to do so. He didn't want me to be a magus. He always looked reluctant and sad whenever we trained. He also didn't speak for a while after we transferred his crest to me. He probably regretted doing that. I can tell it hurt him to see me in pain as he and an old contact of his that helped us carve it in. Naruto said in a somber tone, remembering his adoptive father. I am surprised you are telling me all this. We are only in a temporary truce. She replied seriously. Dad always did say that magecraft isn't something you should hide so desperately. Naruto said in reply with a soft smile. What? What does that mean? Did he seriously? Of course he didn't mean proclaim your status as a magus and use magecraft openly, but be relaxed, don't be so tense about life, don't be bound by conventional rules. Shut up. Rin exclaimed in anger. Naruto just rose an eyebrow in confusion. Your father was no magus. And neither is someone like you who was trained by him and uses guns. She nearly shouted, standing right in front of him. What the hell is your problem? Why are you so angry? Naruto questioned in annoyance. She insulted him like it was nothing. She insulted his dead father like it was nothing. Who are you to say any of that? You don't know our past. You have no right to judge whether I can be called a magus or not. That isn't that point. What I can't forgive is, she then trailed off as if remembering something. Sorry, something came over me, I guess. No? You are gonna tell me what worked you up so much that you insulted not only myself, but my deceased father. What can't you forgive, Rin? Naruto retorted firmly. After a moment she turned to face him and said softly, to a magus, magecraft doesn't belong to oneself. It's the result passed along from parent to child, from generation to generation. It's the duty of the magus to pass it on to their child. She then looked up and said pointedly at Naruto, but your father wanted to abandon that duty. I can't forgive such a thing. Your father wanted to be a parent rather than a magus. Rin? Naruto trailed off unsure. She must be jealous to an extent. Her father probably treated her like an apprentice or a tool, rather than a daughter like she wanted. Naruto deduced. He could see why his situation angered her if that was the case. Sorry. Saying this to you won't change anything. No, it's fine. I think I understand and I know you will just get mad if I try to comfort you and show sympathy, so I won't. You are a better magus than me, Rin. Naruto replied with a warm smile that made her blush and look away. But it turned into a good-natured grin when he said, but I am the better fighter. Naruto laughed at her indignant expression on her red face, but just as she was about to retort the grandfather clock chimed indicating the time. Naruto calmed his laughter down and smiled to Rin, well, I better head on home. She took in a calming breath herself and said professionally, then we'll exchange information regarding the search for this master at school from now on. Let's meet at noon on the rooftop during lunch. Sounds good to me. Rin then looked to her side and called out, Archer. The Greek warrior appeared to Rin's side. He has blue eyes and long dirty blonde hair that flows down to the back of his thighs. Some of it frames his face resting on his shoulders. He wears archaic Greek armor, which is essentially a tunic layered with hardened leather and plated with bronze, but he has armored greaves to go along with the ensemble. To finish it off he has Greek sandals and his black bow behind his back with his quiver. He has an amiable smile on his face and seems very gentle and relaxed. We will be associates for a while, so why don't you protect Emiya-kun on his way back? Don't attack him, okay? Rin orders. The servant of the archer class bowed and replied, as you wish, master. Here is far enough, you didn't need to escort me anyway. I was fine on my own, but tell Rin thanks anyway, it's nice that she was so worried about me. Naruto finished jokingly. Yes, I was planning on doing so, but master's orders and all that. I'll make sure to tell her you said that in a teasing way as well, she gets flustered too easily. The servant archer replied in an easygoing manner. His gentle smile was still intact as well. "Oh, I hope you won't. If you do, she will blow up on me tomorrow." Naruto shot back with a grin as well. The Greek warrior chuckled. "I wish my students had your attitude. They always wanted glory, or some other selfish goal, and if they had a just goal, they were too narrow-minded, and it cost them. They may have become great heroes, but they always did have a moment of hubris that marred their accomplishments." "And what exactly is my attitude?" Naruto asked. He took the praise for what it was worth. This servant was a hero worthy enough to be recognized by the Grail. Compliments like that, they are something special. "From what I have seen and heard, you can be calm, peaceful, and even joking just a moment ago, but when pushed enough, you become fierce and unrelenting." Archer paused and said, "You really live up to your namesake, Maelstrom." He finished with his gentle smile still intact. "I'll fight if I have to. I just want to end this stupid selfish war." Naruto missed the slight twitch in the man's smile. "Without killing anyone, without sacrifices," Archer prodded. "I'm not so naive to think that none of that will happen. I have killed and sacrificed before. If it means that innocence will be kept out of the crossfire, then I will gladly dirty my hands with blood." Naruto shot back with steel in his eyes. "Fair enough, but I am curious. From what I gather, you didn't use a command spell to summon Saber in your fight against that servant that was probably Rider. You may be stronger and more capable than most magus and masters, but you can't match up to a heroic spirit. They have noble phantasms. So, why did you not call on Saber?" asked Archer with genuine curiosity. Naruto sighed before replying, "Would you believe me if I said I wasn't fighting full power?" At the raised eyebrow he got in response, he continued, "You heroic spirits have you secret noble phantasms. I have my secrets as well. To me that fight was about gathering information. I didn't need Saber to do that." Archer chuckled once more before he turned to leave. "Not without a few parting words, however. Saber sure is lucky to have a master like you. I'm sure with both of your strengths you two will go far. I look forward to seeing the path you choose to take, Uzumaki Naruto." With that, the Greek archer disappeared from Naruto's sight, leaving Naruto to contemplate the conversation as he headed home. When Naruto came home to a quiet and empty house, he knew he came home later than he should have. So he went to check on Saber. He found her resting in her futon. He was about to close the door, when she said calmly, "Naruto, you were out very late." Naruto sheepishly scratched the back of his head and said, "Yet things came up at school that I will tell you about tomorrow morning. Sorry if I worried you." Saber just replied softly, "Naruto, I'm glad you are unharmed." Naruto smiled softly as she went back to sleep. He closed her door and decided he would sit on his porch in the backyard to meditate for a bit before going to sleep. However, Archer's words were ringing in his head. What did he mean, the path I choose to take? Was he trying to warn me of something? Naruto decided he wasn't in the mood to meditate right now, so he decided to try his hand at sleeping. Maybe his past life would have an answer. Unfortunately for Naruto, his past life had no advice for his situation. Instead, he had a dreamless sleep for the first time in over a month. He was a little annoyed at the fact that when he wants to see a dream, it doesn't come. He even tried going back to sleep in the morning to see if he could trigger one. Of course, all he got in return was an irate Taiga reprimanding him on attempting to sleep in on a school day. So we find Naruto at the breakfast table prepared once again by Sakura, grumbling to himself while he chewed on his food. He was brought out of his annoyance by soft sounds of amazement coming from Sakura and Taiga. "Sakura-chan, how many bowls has Saber-chan had so far?" questioned Taiga uneasily. With an equally uneasy smile, Sakura replied, "This is her fourth." She was interrupted by a bowl brought to her line of sight. She looked up to meet the stoic face of Saber, who merely said, "Another, please." Naruto stifled a chuckle at the look on Sakura's face, before she snapped out of her amazement and said, "Ah." Right away. She then proceeded to fill up another bowl for her. While those two were occupied, Taiga whispered to Naruto, "Hey." Once she got his attention, she continued, "Did something happen yesterday?" "Nothing really." Naruto answered flippantly before a smirk formed on his face, and he continued, "By the way, Taiga-ni, you should hurry up." "Eh? It's barely past 7. Naruto interrupted her as his smirk grew. "No, well, I am proud of you that you remembered the time. I meant something else," he finished while gesturing to the table. When Taiga followed his hand with a tick mark for his shot at her lack of time management, she gasped in horror. All of the plates and bowls of food were empty save for scraps. She looked up to the culprit, who had just placed down her chopsticks elegantly, as she said stoically with a small bow, "Thank you for the meal." Taiga lost it right then as she exclaimed in disbelief and sorrow, "Ah. My natto pot, all gone." Naruto of course was red in the face, trying to restrain his laughter, because Saber just ignored everything by standing up and saying, "Please, excuse me." Meanwhile, Taiga continued to sob. How could she? "I can't go on, my source of energy." Naruto ignored the sobbing to his right in favor of Sakura, who questioned him, "What happened?" Naruto just looked up at her and said with a smile that made Sakura blush slightly, "Well, she was worried that I was out late last night, and I didn't call her. She is my bodyguard. So she was just upset that her job could have been messed up in case I got hurt. I'm assuming that is what the cold shoulder is about." I see, she replied with a contemplative look on her face. In actuality, Saber had caught Naruto as he was going to the breakfast table earlier, and pulled him aside for a discussion. Like I said, there was nothing I could do. She was constantly attacking me with her superior speed, and I'm sure if I had stopped to take a moment to focus and summon you, she would have taken that opportunity to strike me down. Plus, neither of us were going full power. She didn't use her noble phantasm, and I didn't go full out. We were both trying to gather information on the enemy in that fight. Naruto argued back. I was able to gather that she isn't very fond of her master, and that he is weak or not a very capable one. They are also behind the extremely unsubtle barrier surrounding the school. Naruto finished with an indignant pout. Saber's eye merely twitched before she said, regardless, you should have summoned me. There would have been more that we could have done together than alone. Even for this temporary cooperation with Rin, I wish you would have consulted me first. You are against it. Why? Questioned Naruto in confusion. No. Instead, I support your decision since you will be able to gain knowledge you currently lack from Rin. However, Rin was originally an enemy we had to fight. You should be careful when coming in contact with her. She replied firmly. I know all that. How we fought earlier in the day, I know to be careful around her. That is why this is a temporary truce. But, she is a good person from what I can tell. She won't betray us until we both agree that the truce is over. As Naruto finished, Saber could only stare into his eyes as she tried to find anything wrong with his judgment. Instead, she sighed and stood up to head to the breakfast table. It was so troublesome to have such an unorthodox master. Senpai, a gentle voice broke Naruto out of his reverie as he turned to face the source. The archery club isn't meeting up for a while, so I won't have morning practice during this time. So, if it's okay with you, we can go to school together, asked Sakura as she played with the apron under the table nervously. Naruto just smiled knowingly and replied, yeah, sounds like a plan, Sakura-chan. Let's clean up the mess those two left for us and get going. Okay. She answered with a more confident smile. As Naruto and Sakura put on their shoes to leave, Naruto notices Sakura pause. What's wrong, Sakura-chan? She mumbles out as she points to the source. Which happened to be Saber right behind Naruto. Naruto of course looks at Saber in a confused manner as she puts on her shoes. So you are gonna follow me all day? Naruto asks tiredly. Of course. It is my duty to protect you, Naruto. She says in her normal stoic manner as she opens the door, only to open it too. Rin? Questioned Naruto. She was in her normal school outfit as she looks slyly at everyone and says coolly, I knew this would happen. Not to be rude, but why are you here? Asked Naruto with a tick over his brow. He knows she is doing this to get under his skin. Tasaka-senpai trailed off Sakura in a shocked tone. Sakura, she mumbled out in surprise before she regained her composure and regarded her out of the corner of her eye. Oh yeah, the archery club isn't meeting today. Why are you? Sakura asked, unsure of her intentions. Well, I've decided to go to school with the Miyakon starting today. She stated proudly as she strutted forward and finished by asking innocently, you didn't hear about it? They both turned to Naruto as his eye began to twitch even more when he saw Rin wink at him, and Sakura look at him sadly. But he decided to get a little revenge and say, no Rin, I don't remember agreeing to that. Besides, I promised Sakura-chan I would walk with her to school. He grinned when he saw Rin's eye begin to twitch dangerously, and Sakura light up with happiness. The Miyakon, Rin mumbled out darkly. I can meet up with you during lunch at noon, right? Let's meet up at the roof. Rin just muttered to herself angrily before she sighed and nodded. I suppose that is fine. I'll see you later, Sakura and Miyakon. What are you doing? Came the voice of Saber as she was already out the door. Boy, Saber, give me a minute, demanded Naruto. Rin just shook her head and sighed as she whispered to Naruto, you should have predicted this would have happened when you came home last night. Consider matters more carefully. She finished as she walked out the door, leaving him, Saber, and Sakura alone. Well? Questioned an impatient Saber. Saber, I know you want to go with me, but that is just asking for trouble to appear. Besides, here he whispered to her as he leaned forward, I can take of myself, and I promise if things get to the point where I can't handle it, I will summon you. Even though that is what you said last time. She whispered back harshly. Naruto just sighed. He didn't like using this ability. It was unfair and manipulative. Naruto doesn't like using such a manipulative technique on his close friends and family, but Saber is forcing his hand. So he decided to go with the proven method that has worked countless times for him with the females of the world. He took a deep breath, shadowed his eyes and suddenly looked up to Saber. Saber looked back at Naruto, and her breath hitched in her throat. Naruto currently had his blue eyes whitened immensely and filled with unshed tears. His lips were quivering in a pitiful pout, as he clasped his hands together in a begging fashion, and whimpered a drawn-out, please. With his whisker marks it seemed like this was a fox kit that you just kicked. Or a small cuddly lion to Saber. He even had the golden mane and whiskers. Sakura had to turn away and bite her lip to stifle the squeal and glomp she desperately wanted to do. Saber forced her eyes to turn away to preserve her royal pride, and hide her small blush, as she mumbled out a fine. But make sure you come home before dark this time. Instantly Naruto was back to normal, causing both Saber and Sakura to sigh in relief. Naruto rushed to Saber's side and gave her a big hug, lifting her in the air and said, "Thanks for trusting me, Saber, I'll see you later," he said as he broke the hug and left the house with a wave. Sakura just bowed her goodbye and headed off after him. Saber just stood in her spot transfixed, replaying the events over and over again. She finally snapped out of it and muttered to herself and walked to the dojo about stubborn and annoying masters with a small smile on her face. Naruto and Sakura were walking down the normal route they would take going to school. Sakura was a little nervous, but happy she was able to bring up the courage to ask her crush to walk with her to school. Now they could be alone, together. Sakura had to turn her head away to hide her growing blush from Naruto, in case he looked her way as she tried to force it down. Meanwhile, Naruto was relaxed on the outside, but really he was worried about how things are going in his partnership with Saber. She was disappointed and angry with him for breaking his promise. Naruto is supposed to be a man of his word. In the end, that is all anyone has left to go by. Will you uphold your word? In his past life and his current one, he has always strived to keep his word. Now though, Naruto just lightly shook his head to get rid of the negative thoughts and turned to Sakura. The walk was getting too quiet for his taste. So Sakura-chan, at attaining her attention he continued, "Sorry for having you make breakfast every day lately," Naruto stated, sheepishly scratching his cheek. Sakura though just smiled gently and replied, "It's alright, I like cooking for you, senpai. It makes me happy." Naruto just said mock exasperatedly, "Ha, what am I gonna do with you, Sakura-chan? What will our classmates think? We are acting like a married couple," he finished with a hidden teasing smirk. It only grew whiter at her blush and stuttering. "TTTH that, she paused from her embarrassment when she heard a stifled chuckle threatening to burst. She found the source to be Naruto struggling to hold in his amusement. Of course Sakura whined, "SCMPAI. Sorry Sakura-chan. I just can't help it. You are just way too much fun to tease. You always look so cute when you blush and stutter like that." Since he was walking ahead of her this time, since she started to slow down from the embarrassment and shock of what he was saying, he didn't see the growing effect of his words on her. She was blushing even harder than before. "I mean, I'm being serious. You keep cooking for me like that, I might just fall for you," Naruto exclaimed. That is when he heard a dull thud from behind him. Naruto turned around to see a red-faced Sakura from the roots of her hair to her neck, with steam coming out of her ears as she processed Naruto's words. Her eyes were closed from fainting, but she kept muttering lowly with a wide goofy smile, "SCMPAI Naruto SCMPAI, falling for me. Naruto just sweat-dropped at the familiar scene from his past life. Sakura was pretty similar to Hinata. With a chuckle he picked her up bridal style and kept walking to school. "I hope no rumors come of this." As Naruto left the school nurse's office, he had to roll his eyes at the whispering following him. It seems his entrance to school with him holding Sakura generated more than just a few conversations of gossip. He had left Sakura a note apologizing for teasing her too much, hoping she will be alright, and with a final bit of teasing, wrote at the bottom as an afterthought, "You look cute when you're sleeping." Seriously, it was addicting to tease Sakura. But what was on his mind was the barrier he felt as soon as he entered the school grounds. It was getting stronger, and it was still not very subtle. Whoever is the master is a very vicious person, or just not very smart. Really? Take out an entire school to fuel your servant. The war was supposed to be discreet, right? The rest of the day flew by, and before Naruto knew it, it was time to meet up with Rin on the rooftop. On the way up the stairs, he saw Sakura walking down the same flight. "Oh, hey Sakura-chan. You look like you are feeling better," Naruto said with a grin. Sakura blushed slightly at her actions and fainting earlier in the morning and said, Thank you for taking care of me as senpai." She found the hem of her skirt really interesting right then. "Oh, it's no problem, I always take care of my precious people. We'll all see you later, Sakura-chan," Naruto replied with a smile as he continued walking up the stairs. Sakura though stood frozen in shock. Precious people," she repeated in her head. She lightly shook her head as she snapped out of it, though as she continued down the stairs, she had a bright smile on her face for the rest of the day. As Naruto opened the door to the rooftop, he looked around to see if Rin was there yet. After a few seconds he spotted her leaning against the fence with her arms crossed and eyes closed. Naruto walked towards her and said nonchalantly, "Well, this morning was messy, wasn't it?" He finished as he leaned against the fence next to her. Rin's eyebrow began to twitch as she said, "I was trying to talk to you about our truce, and you sent me away." Naruto just looked at her out of the corner of his eye and said, "Well, what you were about to do to Sakura-chan wasn't gonna be nice, and I just prevented it. Besides, SHASKEDFIRST." Naruto finished in a sing-song manner while waving his finger back and forth. Rin huffed as Naruto continued with a grin, "And I know you were trying to pull that whole drama to get back at me for beating you last night." Rin blushed angrily, but coughed to get her composure back and said seriously, "I'll begin with the gravest issue first." Naruto dropped his grin and looked serious as well. Earlier, the school was informed that they have found Ayako. She's alive, but no matter how much they called to her, she wouldn't respond. They diagnosed her as being in toxic shock in the hospital, but it is probably the servant. Naruto interrupted gravely. Rin nodded and continued, a master must have ordered the assault. And once this barrier is activated, it will dissolve and suck out the soul of every human inside the barrier, a very diabolical act. It's a plan to charge up the servant using various means. Yeah, and the servant is most likely the one I fought last night, Naruto said. Rider? Rin questioned. From what you told me of the special traits of each servant, and what I can tell of her skills and blinding speed when she wants to use it, yeah. Of course we don't have any concrete evidence, Naruto answered. Of course. Anyway, all we can do is delay the activation of the barrier, and possibly disrupt it completely. I guess so. The barrier is a high-level one created by a servant, so destroying it should be extremely difficult, if not impossible. So we should focus on destroying the spell marks and delay the activation. Rin finished with a hand on her hip and a small smirk. It will be an endless cycle though, since they will just replace each other, argued Naruto. I know, but it is all we can do right now, replied Rin with a frown. Well, we can get started now. What do you mean? Asked Rin. Well, I can feel one right here, Naruto replied as he knelt down and exposed a spell mark a few feet away from them. It shouldn't be this easy, muttered Rin as she knelt down as well and placed her hand on it. She began to chant, execute medium-powered disenchant in German until the spell mark shattered and faded away. Well, that is one. You seem to have a talent for finding these. Rin paused before looking up and smirking at Naruto. It's getting interesting, no? Stay after school, okay Miyukan? We may be able to give this master a scare. I should bring Saber then. I did promise. He was interrupted by Rin when she said, Don't worry, I'm here, Archer is here in spiritual form, and you are strong yourself. Naruto shook his head and said, Regardless, one more couldn't hurt, and I'm a man of my word. I'll call her and tell her to come and be here once school ends. Rin just sighed in reply, but it turned into a squeak of indignation as she saw him pull out a cell phone. You aren't supposed to have phones in school. Naruto just deadpanned toward her and said, So? Naruto dialed the number to his house ignoring Rin's spluttering, and waited for Saber to answer. He didn't have to wait long as he heard her stoic voice, Hello. Hey Saber. It's me. Naruto. Is something wrong? No. Everything is fine. He could tell she switched to her armor already. Look, I just need you to be here when school ends so you could help me and Rin with something. I thought it would be fair if you were here. He replied. There was a silence before Naruto heard, I see, what is it you require, master? Naruto groaned at that and answered, We are gonna be destroying the spell marks around our school for the barrier that has been erected around it. We assume it is going to be used to suck out the souls of everyone within it, to fuel the servant responsible. I thought you would want in. Of course. It is the duty of a knight and king to defend the innocent and weak. I shall be there soon. She replied royally with pride, but a hint of anger at Barrier's purpose. Good, I'll see you then. With that he hung up his phone just in time for the bell to ring. Rin sighed before saying as she began to leave, Well, let's head back to class. I'll see you after school. Naruto just waved at her as he began to leave himself, Yeah, see ya. As the sun began to set, we find Naruto and an impatient Rin walking towards Saber who was waiting at the gate of the school. She currently was in her civilian public clothes, but like always, she is ready to switch to her armor and sword at the first sign of trouble. Hey Saber, called Naruto with a grin and a wave. Naruto. She nodded in return, Shall we get started? Right. Let's go. Exclaimed an enthusiastic Naruto, causing Rin to shake her head amusedly and Saber to keep walking stoically. And after an hour of destroying spell marks in various locations, some more amusing than others like inside the boys' bathroom or on the ceiling, and an unintentional panty shot, thank God Rin or Saber didn't notice they had destroyed all the spell marks they could find. The master and the servant would have to make new ones, wasting their time. So any others? Questioned Rin. Naruto looked to Saber who shook her head and he replied, None that me or Saber can detect. I see. Well, this should be enough. This person probably didn't expect this many spell marks to be destroyed in one day, so he'll definitely take some action, stated Rin. And that is when we strike. Saber cut in. That's right, affirmed Rin. Then Rin gained a fairly predatory smirk on her face as she said, Now, come on out. I will have you atone for the guilt of having me do all this hard work. It was a smirk that sent chills down Naruto's spine. Scary Naruto whimpered in his mind. But he shook himself of his fear of feminine fury, and brought out 3 drinks from his pack. Here, both of you have a drink, it'll help you relax a bit, and hopefully get rid of that scary smirk on your face, Rin. He added in his mind. HMPH. You're pretty thoughtful, though you don't look it. She replied, accepting the drink with a sly smile. Thank you, Naruto. Nodded Saber in thanks. Naruto just deadpanned toward Rin. Why can't you praise me or at least thank me sincerely like Saber? But, get me milk and tea if you are buying drinks next time. Anything else and my gratitude will lessen. Take note. She replied with the same sly smile. Naruto just sighed as he leaned on the wall next to Saber, who was vigilantly looking for trouble and sipping her drink. He then smiled though as he said, yeah, I got you. But, what? Rin asked. I was just thinking how all your fans would react if they saw their idol act the way she did right now. It would be a fun thing to see as everyone discovers your cunning side. He answered teasingly. It's everyone else's fault for being so gullible. Besides, hiding one's true identity is a great responsibility of a magus. I mean, how would your fangirls feel if they saw what you really do? She finished turning the tables on him. Naruto blanched a bit and nodded. True, you got me there. Things were silent for a moment, with Saber continuing to be vigilant until Rin spoke up, and I am the successor of the Tasaka family. I need to be the flawless elite student, or else I won't be able to face my dead father in heaven. Heaven, huh? He died when I was little. He lived for long enough, and died of natural causes, so I don't feel sad or anything. Because we are Magi. She finished with a stoic look. Naruto just took a sip of his own drink before scoffing and saying, you are a pretty bad liar for all your acting skills. Anyone would feel sad if someone they knew passed away, more so if you are close to them or a family. Don't make excuses or cover things up by saying you are a magus. Rin looked at Naruto before sighing and nodding. You're right, so right, I can't refute it. We should go home soon. Yeah, come on Saber. See you tomorrow then. Came from Rin. Yeah, see you Rin. Come on Saber. Naruto replied as he waved Saber over. Emiya-kun. Naruto heard Rin call. Yeah. Head home quickly, don't wander on the way home, okay? She said with a smile. Oh, you worrying about me now, Rin? I'm touched. Naruto replied teasingly with a hand over his heart dramatically. And no. We're partners now. So if you drop out without me knowing, then it'll ruin my plans. That is all. She yelled indignantly. I see. It would ruin your plans to seduce me, Naruto said with a sagely nod. Why you are impossible. Bye. She left with a huff and a very embarrassed sundew blush. Naruto watched her leave with an amused smile, as he turned to leave with Saber beside him. Master, why do you enjoy teasing her? Questioned Saber with a tilt of her head. Naruto absently thought it was cute. Nah, it's not just her. But, first off is fun, and second Rin is always uptight or dignified. People need to relax, you know. Naruto though paused in his step, as did Saber. They both felt it. Someone made a show of their prana, flaring it. Seems the master and servant knew what they were doing and was just waiting for them to be alone. It was the same feeling as the other spell marks, only just much more potent. No words were said, the duo just nodded to each other as they went to investigate the source. They found it coming from the archery club room. To Naruto, it made sense. Ayako was supposed to be the president of the club, and she was the first victim. So they entered the building, and they both looked around the dark room for any sign of enemies. Saber had switched to her armor and sword, and Naruto had his holster on with all his gear. His hands were hovering over his weapons, readying to draw them. That is when Naruto saw it. On the far side of the room, a massive spell mark that wasn't even hidden took up most of the wall. Saber, cover me while I destroy it. Yes. Naruto didn't flinch from the initial backlash, but kept muttering the enchantments under his breath to destroy it. As he was about to finish, he stopped and Saber tensed, readying her sword. He turned to face the new arrival and said, Rider. I assume that is your class. And she was there, not even acknowledging the two for a moment in the doorway, until she nodded to him. She respected him despite his unorthodox tactics, and driving her off in a fight for the same reason she should despise him. He was competent. Unlike her master. How are you doing, Emiya? Came a very smug and arrogant voice. Naruto just sighed. Shinji, still a smug bitch I see. Shinji's eye twitched before he regained his composure and said, there is no need to fight, let's call off our servants. You'll pardon me if I don't want to believe you, so no, I think Saber will stay with me. Naruto interrupted firmly. That's fine, he stated, rolling with the conversation. We can all get acquainted at my place. He asked with the same smug smirk. Thanks for watching.